The moment Ethan Cole's lips touched the dying billionaire in his back seat, his entire world shattered. What was meant to save a life became the scandal that destroyed everything he'd built. A single father, a former hero, one desperate breath that the world would twist into something unforgivable. This is the story of a man who did the right thing and paid the ultimate price, and the woman whose gratitude became his greatest curse. Before we dive in, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The rain started just after midnight, turning Boston's streets into rivers of reflected neon and shadow. Ethan Cole navigated his sedan through the slick roads with practiced ease, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching back to adjust the heating vent for his passenger. 5 years of driving strangers through the city had taught him to read silence, when it meant peace, when it meant danger, and when it simply meant someone needed space to exist without explanation. Tonight's fare had requested the longest route possible from the financial district to Beacon Hill. No conversation, no small talk, just the gentle hum of tires on wet pavement and the occasional wash of headlights through rain-streaked windows. Ethan glanced in the rear-view mirror. His passenger sat perfectly still, her face turned toward the window, watching Boston blur past. Victoria Hale. He'd recognized her immediately when she slid into his back seat 40 minutes ago, though he'd said nothing. Everyone in Boston knew that face. It had been plastered across every business magazine and gossip column for the past decade. Youngest self-made billionaire in New England. CEO of Hale Industries at 25. Ruthless, brilliant, untouchable. But tonight, in the dim interior of his car, she looked different, smaller somehow, human. "Take the long way through the common," she'd said when she first got in, her voice quiet but firm. "I don't care about the fare, I need to drive for a while." Ethan had simply nodded and reset the meter. He'd learned long ago not to ask questions. People climbed into his car carrying invisible weights, breakups, business failures, family crises, grief. His job wasn't to lighten those loads. It was just to drive while they figured out how to carry them. The city lights painted moving patterns across Victoria's face as they circled through downtown. She hadn't moved in 20 minutes, hadn't checked her phone, hadn't spoken, just breathed, just existed. Ethan's own phone buzzed in the cup holder, a text from his daughter's babysitter. "Lily's asleep. Take your time. We're fine." He smiled despite the exhaustion pressing behind his eyes. Lily. 7 years old, all wild curls and endless questions about everything. The reason he woke up every morning? The reason he drove strangers through rainy nights instead of fighting fires like he used to. Being a single dad meant making choices. After the accident that ended his firefighting career and the divorce that followed, Ethan had rebuilt his life around one simple principle: be there for his daughter. Driving paid enough to keep them afloat and flexible enough to never miss a school play or parent-teacher conference. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what he'd imagined at 32. But it was enough. "Can you turn left here?" Victoria's voice cut through his thoughts, surprising him. "Toward the harbor?" "Sure thing." Ethan guided the car toward the waterfront where Boston Harbor stretched dark and infinite beneath the storm. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. They drove in silence for another 10 minutes, following the curve of the shoreline. Ethan caught himself checking the mirror more frequently. Something about his passenger's stillness had shifted from peaceful to unsettling. She was breathing faster, he noticed. Shallow, quick breaths that didn't quite seem to fill her lungs. "You all right back there?" he asked, keeping his tone casual. "Fine." The word came out tight, strained. Ethan's firefighter instincts kicked in, the ones that never really went away no matter how many years passed. Something was wrong. He'd seen enough medical emergencies to recognize the signs. The way her hand had moved to her chest, the slight tremor in her shoulders, the sweat beginning to bead on her forehead despite the cool night. "Ma'am, you don't look fine. You want me to pull over?" "No, just keep driving, please." But even as she spoke, Ethan saw her eyes close, saw her head tilt back against the seat. Her breathing was definitely wrong now, rapid, labored, desperate. "Ma'am?" He raised his voice slightly. "Victoria?" No response. Ethan's heart rate spiked. He pulled the car to the side of the road, hazard lights flashing against the rain. "Hey, can you hear me?" He twisted in his seat, reaching back. Victoria's eyes were half open but unfocused, her lips parting as she struggled for air. One hand clutched at her chest, the other hung limp at her side. "Shit!" Ethan killed the engine and threw himself into the back seat, years of emergency training taking over. "Victoria, stay with me!" Her eyes rolled back. Her breathing stopped. Not slowed, stopped. "No, no, no!" Ethan's fingers found her neck, searching for a pulse. Weak, thready, fading fast. "Come on!" His mind raced through possibilities. Heart attack, allergic reaction, pulmonary embolism. It didn't matter what it was. What mattered was the clock now ticking in his head. Brain damage began after 4 minutes without oxygen. Death followed soon after. He couldn't wait for an ambulance, couldn't wait for help. There was only him, this woman, and maybe 90 seconds before everything went irreversibly wrong. Ethan tilted her head back, checked her airway. Clear. He positioned himself, one hand supporting her neck, the other pinching her nose closed. Every second counted. Every breath mattered. He pressed his lips to hers and forced air into her lungs. Once, twice, 3 times. Her chest rose and fell with each rescue breath, but she didn't respond. Didn't cough. Didn't gasp. Just lay there dying, while rain hammered against the windows and Ethan's own heart threatened to explode from his chest. "Come on, Victoria. Breathe. Breathe." He gave her 2 more breaths, then started chest compressions. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. The rhythm burned into his muscle memory from countless training sessions, from real emergencies in burning buildings, from the nightmares that still woke him sometimes. 1 minute passed, then 2. Ethan's arms ached, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. "You're not dying in my car," he growled, pressing down hard enough to feel her ribs flex beneath his palms. "You hear me? Not tonight. Not like this." He bent down again, sealed his mouth over hers, and forced another breath into her lungs. This time, something changed. Victoria's body convulsed. She coughed, harsh and wet, and suddenly she was gasping, drawing air in ragged, desperate pulls. Her eyes flew open, wide and terrified and alive. "Easy, easy!" Ethan supported her as she tried to sit up, her whole body shaking. "You're okay. You're breathing. Just take it slow." Victoria stared at him, confusion and fear warring across her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but only managed another cough. "Don't try to talk," Ethan said, already reaching for his phone. "I'm calling 911. You need a hospital." The ambulance arrived in 6 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Ethan stayed in the back seat with Victoria, monitoring her breathing, keeping her conscious, talking to her in the calm, steady voice he'd used dozens of times to keep victims from slipping into shock. "What's your daughter's name?" Victoria whispered at one point, her voice barely audible over the rain. Ethan blinked. "How did you The photo. On your dashboard." He glanced toward the front seat, where a picture of Lily smiled out from the sun visor. "Her name's Lily. She's 7. She's beautiful." "Yeah, she is." "You saved my life." Victoria's eyes locked onto his, and in that moment, Ethan saw something raw and vulnerable that probably few people ever witnessed. "Why?" "Because you needed help," Ethan said simply. "That's all." The paramedics arrived in a rush of flashing lights and urgent voices. They loaded Victoria onto a stretcher, asking questions, checking vitals, starting an IV. Ethan stayed back, answering what he could, explaining what happened, watching as they prepared to transport her. "Sir, you did good work here," one of the paramedics told him. "Another minute and we'd be having a very different conversation." Ethan just nodded, the adrenaline starting to fade, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "We're taking her to Mass General," the paramedic continued. "You should come in, give a statement, get checked out yourself." "I'm fine. You just performed CPR for 3 minutes straight. Humor us." Ethan followed the ambulance to the hospital, his hand still trembling slightly on the wheel. The rain had eased to a drizzle, and Boston's streets were quieter now, the city settling into the deep hours before dawn. At the hospital, everything became a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Ethan gave his statement to the admitting nurse, declined medical attention for himself, and was about to leave when a security guard approached. "Mr. Cole? Miss Hale is asking for you." Ethan frowned. "She's conscious?" "Yes, sir. Stable and conscious. She specifically requested to see you before you left." Against his better judgment, Ethan followed the guard through the hospital's maze of corridors to a private room on the 4th floor. 2 men in expensive suits stood outside the door. Private security, Ethan guessed. They watched him with flat, assessing eyes, but stepped aside when the guard nodded. Inside, Victoria Hale sat propped up in bed, hooked to monitors and IVs, but very much alive. Her hair, which had been perfectly styled hours ago, now hung in damp tangles around her face. Without makeup, she looked younger, more fragile, but her eyes, those were the same, sharp, intelligent, searching. "You didn't have to stay," she said as Ethan entered. "They said you wanted to see me." "I did." Victoria was quiet for a moment, her fingers plucking at the hospital blanket. "The doctors said you saved my life. They said if you hadn't started CPR when you did, I would have died." Ethan shrugged. "I did what anyone would do." "No." Her voice was firm despite its weakness. "Most people would have panicked or hesitated or tried to call for help first. You acted. You knew what to do, and you did it without thinking about liability or consequences or—" She stopped, took a breath. "You saved me, and I don't know how to thank you for that." "You don't need to thank me." "I do, though." Victoria's gaze was intense, almost uncomfortable in its directness. "Do you know what happened? Why I collapsed?" Ethan shook his head. "Severe allergic reaction, anaphylaxis. I had lunch at a new restaurant. They must have cross-contaminated something with shellfish." She gestured to the IV. "I had my EpiPen, but I left it in my purse at the office when I changed bags. Stupid, careless, and it nearly killed me." "You couldn't have known." "I should have been more careful." Victoria's jaw tightened. "In my world, one mistake can cost everything. I don't make mistakes like that." "Everyone makes mistakes." "Not me. I can't afford to." She looked away, something almost bitter crossing her face. "But I did, and you paid the price for it." Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about? I didn't pay anything." "Not yet." Victoria turned back to him, and now there was something else in her eyes. Worry, maybe, or warning. "But you will. When people find out what happened tonight, when the story gets out, your life is going to change, Ethan, and not for the better." "I don't understand." "You will." She reached for something on the bedside table, a business card which she held out to him. "That's my direct number. When things start to get complicated, and they will, call me. Let me help." Ethan took the card, more confused than ever. "What's going to get complicated? I gave someone CPR. That's not exactly headline news." Victoria's laugh was soft and humorless. "You don't know the world I live in. Everything is headline news. Everything is political. Everything is leverage." She met his eyes. "You saved my life, Ethan Cole. In my world, that makes you either a threat or an asset, and either way, people will come for you." "That's crazy." "Is it? You're a single father, a former firefighter, driving for a rideshare company. I'm a billionaire with enemies who'd love to see me vulnerable." She gestured between them. "This? Tonight? It's a story. And stories can be weaponized." Ethan wanted to argue, to tell her she was being paranoid. But something in her voice, the certainty, the weariness, made him hesitate. "Just keep the card," Victoria said quietly. "Please, when you need me, I'll be there. It's the least I can do." Ethan pocketed the card, still not entirely sure what he was agreeing to. "Get some rest, Miss Hale." "Hale." "Doctor's orders." "It's Victoria, and thank you, Ethan, for everything." Ethan left the hospital as dawn was breaking over Boston, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. He was exhausted, running on fumes and adrenaline, but he felt good. He'd saved a life tonight, done something that mattered. Whatever Victoria was worried about, it would blow over. Had to. Stories like this didn't follow ordinary people like him. They belonged to her world, not his. He was wrong. The first call came 3 days later, just as Ethan was dropping Lily off at school. "Mr. Cole? This is Jennifer Matthews from the Boston Herald. I'm doing a story about Victoria Hale's medical emergency last week, and I understand you were the driver who saved her life. I'd love to get your side of the story." Ethan frowned, phone pressed to his ear while Lily gathered her backpack. "How did you get this number?" "Public record, sir." "So is it true you performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on Ms. Hale?" "It's called rescue breathing. And yes, I performed CPR. She wasn't breathing." "And you felt qualified to make that assessment? You're not a licensed paramedic, correct?" The question felt like a trap, but Ethan couldn't figure out why. "I'm a former firefighter. I'm CPR certified. I did what I was trained to do." "Interesting. And how long were your lips in contact with Ms. Hales during this procedure?" Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "What kind of question is that?" "Just trying to get the facts, Mr. Cole. There's been some speculation about the nature of your relationship with Miss Hale." Ethan hung up. The second call came an hour later. Different reporter, same questions, same insinuations. Then a third. By lunch, his phone was ringing constantly. Ethan turned it off and tried to focus on work, but the damage was already spreading. His rideshare app was flooded with ride requests from passengers who just wanted to ask about Victoria. Some offered him money for his story. Others accused him of taking advantage of her. That evening, picking Lily up from her after-school program, Ethan noticed the other parents staring, whispering. One mother actually pulled her daughter away when Lily tried to say hello. "Daddy, why is everyone acting weird?" Lily asked in the car, her small voice uncertain. "I don't know, sweetheart, but it's going to be fine." It wasn't fine. By the next morning, Ethan's face was on the front page of 3 different tabloids. The headlines made his stomach turn. "Billionaire's backseat kiss. Chies. Hero or opportunist? Victoria Hale's mysterious driver. What really happened that night? Single dad's controversial life-saving method raises questions." The stories were worse. Some painted him as a calculating opportunist who saw a chance to get close to a billionaire. Others questioned his methods, implying the CPR was unnecessary or inappropriate. A few went further, suggesting the whole thing was staged, that Victoria and Ethan were having an affair, that the emergency was fabricated to cover up a relationship. None of it was true. But the truth didn't seem to matter. Ethan's phone, which he'd turned back on to stay in contact with Lily's school, exploded with messages. Some supportive, but many hostile. Strangers calling him a liar, a scam artist. Worse, his social media accounts, which he barely used, were flooded with comments and threats. The rideshare company called that afternoon. Ethan knew what was coming before the regional manager even spoke. "Mr. Cole, we've reviewed the incident involving Victoria Hale and determined that your conduct violated several company policies regarding passenger interaction and personal boundaries. Effective immediately, your driving privileges are suspended pending investigation." "I saved her life," Ethan said quietly. "We understand that, and we're not questioning your intentions. But the company has to protect itself from liability. Until this matter is resolved, we can't have you on the platform. I'm sorry." They weren't sorry. They were covering their asses. Ethan hung up and stared at his phone, at the bank app showing his dwindling balance, at the calendar with Lily's tuition payment due in 2 weeks. He'd been fired, not for doing anything wrong, but for doing something right in a way that became inconvenient. The business card Victoria had given him sat in his wallet, crisp and white and waiting. "When you need me, I'll be there." Ethan pulled out his phone, hesitated, then dialed the number. She answered on the first ring. "Ethan?" "You were right," he said. "Things got complicated." There was a long pause, and when Victoria spoke again, her voice carried a weight that matched his own. "I'm sorry. I hoped I was wrong. Can we talk?" "Yes." "Come to my office tomorrow, noon. I'll have security expecting you." "Victoria, I don't want your money or—" "This isn't about money, Ethan. It's about fixing what I broke." Her voice softened. "You saved my life and lost yours because of it. That's not right. Let me help make it right." The call ended, and Ethan sat in his empty apartment listening to Lily play in her room and wondered how a single moment of doing the right thing had turned into a nightmare. He'd saved Victoria Hale's life, and somehow that had become his biggest mistake. Tomorrow, he'd go to her office. Tomorrow, he'd try to understand how goodness could be twisted into scandal. Tomorrow, he'd start fighting back. But tonight, he just needed to hold his daughter and pretend that the world outside their small apartment wasn't tearing him apart for being a hero. The rain started again around midnight, tapping against the windows like an echo of that night. Ethan stood by Lily's door, watching her sleep, and made a promise to himself. Whatever came next, whatever battles he had to fight, he'd protect her from this. She wouldn't pay for his decision to save someone's life. He'd find a way through. He always did. But as Ethan finally crawled into bed, exhausted and anxious and angry, one thought kept circling through his mind. Victoria was right. In her world, everything was a weapon, even kindness, even mercy, even the simple act of keeping someone alive. And now he was caught in the crossfire of a war he never asked to fight. Outside, Boston slept beneath the rain, indifferent to one man's struggle. The city had seen 1,000 stories like his, ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances, crushed beneath the weight of forces they couldn't control. But Ethan Cole wasn't interested in being another cautionary tale. He'd saved a life. And if the world wanted to punish him for that, then he'd fight back. Not with money or power or influence. He had none of those things. But with the one thing they couldn't take from him, the truth. The simple, undeniable truth that sometimes, when someone is dying in front of you, you don't think about consequences or liability or what people might say. You just act. You just breathe for them when they can't breathe for themselves. You just try to save them. And that, Ethan thought, as sleep finally claimed him, shouldn't be a crime. It should be what it was. Human. The alarm woke him 4 hours later, and Ethan rose to face whatever came next, carrying that truth like armor. He'd need it, because the storm, the real storm, was only beginning. The Hale Industries building stood like a glass fortress in downtown Boston, 52 stories of steel and ambition reflecting the morning sun. Ethan had driven past it 1,000 times, never imagining he'd walk through its doors. Now, standing in the marble lobby with security eyeing him like a potential threat, he felt every inch the outsider he was. "Mr. Cole?" A woman in a perfectly tailored suit approached, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "I'm Sarah Chen, Ms. Hale's executive assistant. She's expecting you." Ethan followed her to a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. They ascended in silence, the city shrinking below them until Boston looked like a model train set, miniature and manageable. If only real life could be controlled so easily. The elevator opened directly into Victoria's office suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor where, just days ago, Ethan had fought to keep her alive. The irony wasn't lost on him. Victoria stood by the windows, her back to him, phone pressed to her ear. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. The vulnerability he'd seen in the hospital was gone, replaced by the armor of power and control. "I don't care what the board thinks, Marcus. My health is not up for committee review." Her voice was sharp, cutting. "Tell them I'll be at the quarterly meeting, and if anyone wants to question my fitness to lead, they can do it to my face." She ended the call without waiting for a response and turned to Ethan. "Thank you for coming." "Didn't feel like I had much choice." Victoria's expression softened slightly. "You always have a choice, Ethan. That's something we both need to remember." She gestured to a sitting area near the windows. "Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine." Ethan sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than his car. "You said you wanted to help. I'm here. So help me understand what's happening." Victoria settled across from him, crossing her legs, her posture perfect. "What's happening is exactly what I warned you about. You became part of my story, and my story is always being rewritten by people who want something from me. I don't want anything from you. I know. That's what makes you dangerous to certain people." Victoria leaned forward slightly. "Ethan, I have enemies. Competitors who'd love to see me fail. Board members who think I'm too young, too aggressive, too female. Shareholders who'd prefer a more malleable CEO. And family members who believe they're entitled to control my company simply because we share DNA. What does that have to do with me? Everything, because you represent something they can't control. A genuine human moment in a life they've spent years trying to dissect and exploit." Victoria's jaw tightened. The fact that you saved my life without asking for anything in return makes you either a saint or a threat, depending on who's telling the story. And some people prefer the threat narrative. Ethan rubbed his face, exhaustion settling into his bones. So what? They're going to keep destroying my reputation until… what? I go away? I admit to something I didn't do? Or until I make it stop? Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolled through something, then handed it to him. These are the stories that haven't been published yet. The ones my legal team has been fighting to suppress. Ethan's stomach turned as he read the headlines. They were worse than anything that had already come out. Allegations of prior relationships, investigations into his finances looking for evidence of payoffs, even questions about his fitness as a parent. They're going after Lily? His voice came out strangled. They're going after everything. That's how this works. Victoria took the phone back. But I can stop it. I have lawyers, PR people, resources you can't imagine. Let me deploy them on your behalf. In exchange for what? Victoria looked genuinely hurt. Nothing, Ethan. You saved my life. I'm trying to save yours. Nobody does something for nothing, not in your world. You did. The words hung between them, simple and undeniable. Ethan wanted to argue, to maintain his cynicism, but he couldn't. She was right. What do you want me to do? He asked finally. Let me hire you. Officially. As my personal driver and security consultant. Victoria raised a hand before Ethan could protest. Hear me out. Right now you're just some guy who gave me CPR. Easy to dismiss, easy to attack. But if you're on my payroll, you're protected. You have standing. And more importantly, we control the narrative. By lying? By telling a different truth. You're qualified for the job. You have emergency response training. You know the city. You've already proven you can handle a crisis. Nothing about that is false. Victoria's gaze was steady. And it gives us both what we need. You get income, protection from the wolves, and legitimacy. I get someone I can actually trust in a role where trust matters. Ethan wanted to say no. Every instinct told him to walk away, to keep his distance from this woman and her dangerous world. But the practicality of his situation couldn't be ignored. He had bills, he had Lily, and he had enemies he didn't even know how to fight. What's the pay? He asked, hating how mercenary it sounded. Victoria named a figure that made Ethan's heart skip. It was triple what he'd been making with the rideshare company. Enough to actually breathe, enough to give Lily the stability she deserved. That's too much. That's market rate for executive security in Boston. I checked. Victoria stood, moving to her desk where she retrieved a folder. This is the contract, standard employment agreement, benefits package, everything above board. My lawyers reviewed it specifically to ensure there's nothing exploitative or binding beyond normal employment terms. You can have your own lawyer look it over. I can't afford a lawyer. Then use mine. The point is, Ethan, this is real. This is legitimate. And this is me trying to do the right thing for someone who did the right thing for me. Ethan took the folder, his hands shaking slightly. He'd come here angry, defensive, ready for a fight. Instead, he'd found an offer that felt too good to be true, which meant it probably was. I need time to think about it. Of course. Take whatever time you need. Victoria's phone buzzed and she glanced at it, her expression darkening. Though I should mention that the Boston Herald is planning to run their story about you tomorrow morning, with or without your cooperation. What story? The one where they question whether the CPR was necessary, whether I was actually in danger, and whether this whole thing was staged to generate publicity for something. They haven't decided what yet. Maybe a book deal. Maybe a movie. Maybe just mutual attention. Victoria's voice dripped with disgust. It's garbage, obviously, but garbage sells papers. Ethan's throat tightened. Can you stop them? I can try, but they know I'll try, which means they're probably sitting on other stories, other angles. This is a war of attrition, Ethan, and they have more ammunition than you do. She paused. Unless you let me help. The trap, because Ethan could see now that's what it was, however well-intentioned, closed around him. Refuse Victoria's help and face the media alone, with no resources and no platform to defend himself. Accept it and become permanently entangled in her world with all its complications and dangers. I'll sign, Ethan said quietly. But I want one thing clear. I'm doing this for my daughter. Not for you, not for me. For Lily. So she doesn't have to see her father destroyed on the news every night. Understood. Victoria's relief was visible. And Ethan, for what it's worth, I think that makes you a better person than most people I know, myself included. The contract signing took 15 minutes. By the time Ethan left Hale Industries, he was officially employed, insured, and protected by a legal team that probably cost more per hour than he used to make in a week. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he just felt trapped. The media response to Victoria's announcement, released through official channels that afternoon, was immediate and mixed. Some outlets praised her for standing by the man who saved her life. Others accused her of trying to buy his silence. A few suggested the whole thing confirmed their suspicions about an improper relationship. Ethan tried to ignore it all and focus on Lily. He picked her up from school that afternoon, and they went to their favorite pizza place, the one with the arcade games and the owner who always snuck Lily extra tickets. "Daddy, Melissa's mom said you're famous now," Lily announced between bites of pepperoni. "Are you?" "Not really, sweetheart. People are just talking about something I did at work." "What did you do?" Ethan hesitated. "How did you explain saving someone's life to a 7-year-old without scaring her?" "I helped someone who was sick, made sure they got to the hospital safely." "Like when you helped Mrs. Patterson after she fell?" "Exactly like that." Ethan smiled, remembering their elderly neighbor who'd slipped on ice last winter. He'd carried her inside, called 911, stayed with her until help arrived. No headlines, no scandal, just basic human decency. Why couldn't it have stayed that simple? "The kids at school are saying weird things," Lily said quietly, her eyes on her plate. "About you and some lady. They said you kissed her." Ethan's chest tightened. "I gave her CPR. Do you remember when we learned about CPR in that safety class? When you breathe for someone?" "Right. That's all it was, Lily. I was helping someone breathe. The other stuff people are saying, it's not true. People sometimes make up stories about things they don't understand." Lily nodded, but Ethan could see the confusion in her eyes. She was too young to understand the complexities of media narratives and public perception. Hell, Ethan barely understood them himself. "Am I still going to see you every day?" Lily asked. "Every single day. That's never going to change. Promise?" "Promise." They played skee-ball until Lily's arm got tired and her pockets were full of tickets. On the drive home, she fell asleep in the back seat, her head resting against the window, and Ethan caught himself checking the rearview mirror, not for traffic, but to make sure she was still there, still safe, still his. Everything he did now was for her. The job with Victoria, the contract he'd signed, the media circus he'd have to navigate. All of it came back to this small person sleeping in his car, trusting him to keep the world from swallowing her whole. He wouldn't let her down. The next day, Ethan reported to Hale Industries for his first official day of work. Sarah Chen met him in the lobby with an itinerary, a security badge, and an apologetic smile. "Ms. Hale has meetings all morning, but she'd like you to shadow her starting at noon. There's a luncheon with the board, then a site visit to our manufacturing facility in Cambridge, then drinks with investors at 6. Sarah handed him the badge. "You'll need this for building access. Your desk is on the 48th floor if you need somewhere to work between assignments." "I have a desk?" "You're an employee now, Mr. Cole. Of course you have a desk." The desk, it turned out, was in a small office with a view of the financial district and furniture nicer than anything in Ethan's apartment. There was a computer, a phone with his name already programmed into the directory, and a welcome packet explaining benefits, protocols, and emergency procedures. Ethan sat in the ergonomic chair and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. At noon, he met Victoria outside the executive boardroom. She looked different today, softer somehow, though she wore the same armor of expensive clothes and careful makeup. "Ready?" she asked. "Not even a little bit." Victoria's smile was genuine. "Good. Honesty is refreshing." She lowered her voice as they walked. "Fair warning, the board is going to treat you like a curiosity at best and a threat at worst. Don't take it personally. They treat everyone that way." The luncheon was exactly as uncomfortable as Ethan expected. 12 board members sat around a mahogany table, picking at expensive salads while discussing quarterly projections and market trends. Ethan stood near the wall, trying to be invisible, while Victoria commanded the room with a confidence that seemed almost supernatural. The publicity around my health scare has actually increased our visibility in key demographics, Victoria was saying, her tone brisk and businesslike. Our PR team is leveraging it to highlight our commitment to workplace safety and emergency preparedness. We're launching a CPR training initiative across all divisions. Using the incident for marketing purposes seems tasteless, Victoria, an older man at the far end of the table said. His nameplate read Richard Hale. Family, Ethan guessed. The resemblance was there in the sharp cheekbones and intense eyes. Using a near-death experience to save other lives seems prudent, Uncle Richard, Victoria countered smoothly. But if you'd prefer we ignore the opportunity to do something meaningful, I'm happy to table the initiative. I'd prefer you stop drawing attention to your vulnerabilities. Richard's gaze flickered to Ethan. And the people who exploit them. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Mr. Cole saved my life, Victoria said, her voice dangerously quiet. If you have something to say about that, say it clearly. I'm saying that hiring him looks like either guilt or desperation. Neither is a good look for our CEO. Ethan felt every eye in the room turn toward him. He wanted to defend himself, to tell these smug, powerful people exactly what he thought of their casual cruelty. But he held his tongue. This was Victoria's world, her fight. Mr. Cole is a former firefighter with extensive emergency response training and 5 years of executive protection experience through his private driving work, Victoria said, each word precise and cutting. His employment is based on merit, not sentiment. If you'd like to review his qualifications, I'm happy to provide them. Otherwise, I suggest we move on to actual business. The meeting continued, but the tension never fully dissipated. Ethan stood there, a silent target for suspicion and judgment, and counted the minutes until it was over. Later, in the car on the way to Cambridge, Victoria apologized. My uncle is a bastard, always has been. Don't take it personally. Kind of hard not to, Ethan said from the driver's seat. It felt strange driving her again, but also strangely normal. At least here, he knew what he was doing. Richard has been trying to undermine me since I took over the company. He thinks he should be CEO because he's older, male, and technically next in line by bloodline. The fact that he's also incompetent doesn't seem to factor into his reasoning. Victoria stared out the window at the Charles River sliding past. He'll use you to attack me if he can. Be ready for that. How do I get ready for something like that? By not giving him ammunition. Don't talk to reporters without clearing it through PR first. Don't accept money or gifts from anyone claiming to be my friend. They're probably not. And don't trust anyone who treats you too well too quickly. In my world, kindness usually has a price tag. That's a depressing way to live. It's a realistic way to survive. Victoria turned to look at him, something sad crossing her face. You saved my life, Ethan, and I'm grateful. But I also brought you into something dangerous. I need you to understand that. I'm starting to. The manufacturing facility in Cambridge was impressive. Rows of precision machinery producing medical equipment, workers in clean suits assembling components that would end up in hospitals worldwide. Victoria knew everyone by name, asked about their families, remembered details about their lives. It was masterful, the way she balanced authority and approachability. Watching her work, Ethan began to understand why she'd become successful so young. It wasn't just intelligence or ruthlessness. It was this, the ability to make people feel seen while never losing sight of the larger picture. You're good at this, he told her during a break between facility tours. I should be. I've been preparing for it my whole life. Victoria's smile was tight. My father built this company from nothing. When he died, everyone expected it to fall apart without him. Instead, I made it bigger, stronger, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take it from me. Not even family? Especially not family. They're the ones who will smile while they stab you. She checked her watch. We should head back. The investor drinks start in 90 minutes, and I need to change. The evening event was held at an exclusive club overlooking Boston Harbor. Ethan stood near the bar, nursing a whiskey he didn't really want, while Victoria worked the room. She moved from group to group with practiced ease, laughing at jokes, discussing market opportunities, making connections that probably represented millions of dollars in future business. You're the driver, right? A man in his 50s appeared beside Ethan, drink in hand. The one who saved her? I'm her driver, yes. Interesting career move. From rideshare to billionaire's employee. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. Lucky break. I wouldn't call almost watching someone die lucky. No, I suppose not. The man extended his hand. James Morrison. I sit on Victoria's board. Ethan shook it cautiously. Ethan Cole. I know who you are. Everyone here does. Morrison sipped his drink, studying Ethan over the rim. Can I give you some advice, Mr. Cole? Man to man? Do I have a choice? Morrison chuckled. I like you. You're direct. That's rare in Victoria's orbit. His expression turned serious. Here's the thing. Victoria Hale is brilliant, driven, and utterly ruthless when it comes to protecting what's hers. Right now, that includes you. But the moment you become a liability instead of an asset, she'll cut you loose without hesitation. It's not personal. It's just who she is. You don't know her as well as you think you do. And you do? After what? A week? Morrison's laugh was harsh. You saved her life. That's admirable. But don't mistake gratitude for loyalty. In this world, the only thing that matters is what you can do for someone today. Yesterday's heroics don't buy tomorrow's protection. He walked away, leaving Ethan with a knot in his stomach and a growing certainty that he'd made a terrible mistake. The ride back to Victoria's penthouse was quiet. Ethan navigated Boston's evening traffic while Victoria answered emails on her phone, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. Morrison talked to you, she said without looking up. How did you? Because that's what he does. Plants seeds of doubt. Makes people question their choices. Victoria finally looked up, meeting Ethan's eyes in the rearview mirror. What did he say? That you'll throw me away the moment I stop being useful. And you believed him? I don't know what to believe. Ethan pulled up to her building, a glass tower with doormen and security cameras, and the kind of luxury that felt like a different planet. I barely know you, Victoria. For all I know, he's right. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Come upstairs. What? Come upstairs, to my apartment. There's something I want to show you. Every instinct told Ethan this was a bad idea. Going to her home, alone, after everything people were already saying about them. But curiosity won out over caution. Victoria's penthouse occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered 360-degree views of Boston, the harbor, the ocean, beyond. The furniture was modern and expensive, but somehow impersonal, like a hotel suite designed to impress rather than comfort. Wait here, Victoria said, disappearing down a hallway. Ethan stood by the windows, watching the city lights stretch to the horizon. From up here, Boston looked peaceful, beautiful. None of the chaos or cruelty visible from street level. Victoria returned carrying a leather-bound book, which she handed to him. What is this? Open it. Inside were newspaper clippings, awards, certificates, photographs, all featuring Victoria, chronicling her rise from prep school valedictorian to youngest Ivy League graduate to CEO of a Fortune 500 company by age 25. I don't understand, Ethan said. Keep looking. He flipped through more pages. The clippings grew darker. Articles about her father's death, speculation about whether she could handle the company, accusations of nepotism, of being handed success rather than earning it, photos of her looking exhausted, overwhelmed, alone. People have been doubting me since I was 20 years old, Victoria said quietly, telling me I'd fail, that I wasn't ready, that I was too young, too inexperienced, too female. And you know what? They were right. I wasn't ready. I made mistakes, bad ones, decisions that cost people their jobs, their savings, their trust. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something. Victoria took the book back, closed it, held it against her chest like armor. Morrison is right that I'm ruthless when I need to be, right that I protect what's mine without apology. But he's wrong about one thing. I don't forget the people who stand by me when it matters. My father taught me that loyalty is the only currency that can't be inflated or devalued. You showed me loyalty when you could have just driven away, when you had every reason to protect yourself first. Her eyes met his. I don't take that lightly, Ethan. And I never will. Ethan didn't know what to say. This woman, powerful, confident, seemingly untouchable, was showing him cracks in her armor, trusting him with vulnerabilities that could probably be weaponized by the right person at the right time. I'm not a good person, Victoria continued. I've done things I'm not proud of to get where I am. But I try to do right by the people who matter. You matter. Lily matters. And I meant what I said. I'm going to fix this. The media, the job, all of it. I'm going to make it right. You can't control everything, Victoria. No. But I can try. She managed a small smile. Now go home. Hug your daughter. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. Ethan left feeling more confused than ever. Victoria Hale was either the best actor he'd ever met or genuinely struggling with the same questions about loyalty and trust that he was. Either way, he was in too deep to turn back now. The next morning brought an unexpected turn. Victoria called him at 7, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. Have you seen the news? I just woke up. What happened? Check your email. Then get to my office. We need to talk. The email contained a link to the Boston Herald's website. The headline made Ethan's blood run cold. Secret meetings and private visits inside Victoria Hale's suspicious relationship with her driver. Below were photos. Ethan entering Hale Industries yesterday. Ethan and Victoria at the Cambridge facility. And worst of all, Ethan entering her apartment building last night with a timestamp showing he'd stayed for 43 minutes. The article implied exactly what Ethan feared, that their relationship was inappropriate, that the CPR story was cover for something else, that Ethan was using his access for personal gain. It was all lies. But the photos made it look true. Ethan dressed quickly, arranged for Lily's babysitter to take her to school, and drove to Hale Industries with his hands shaking on the wheel. This was it, the moment Morrison had warned him about. When he stopped being an asset and became a liability, Victoria would fire him, had to. Her company, her reputation, her entire empire couldn't afford to be dragged down by rumors about sleeping with the help. He'd lost everything for saving her life. And now he was about to lose what little he'd gained back. Sarah Chen met him at the elevator with an expression that confirmed his worst fears. She's waiting for you, was all she said. Victoria stood by her windows again, but this time her posture was different, rigid, furious. When she turned, her eyes were blazing. I'm going to destroy them, she said without preamble. The Herald, the photographer, everyone involved in this hit piece. I'm going to burn their careers to the ground. Victoria, they followed you to my home, violated your privacy, implied things about both of us that are categorically false. This isn't journalism, it's character assassination. And fighting it just makes it look true, Ethan said quietly. You know that. I don't care. This crosses a line. It doesn't matter where the line is if they're not going to respect it. Ethan moved closer, forcing her to look at him. You know what you have to do. What you should do. Fire me. Put out a statement saying you made an error in judgment, that you're terminating my employment, that there was nothing inappropriate, but you understand the optics. Then move on. Victoria stared at him like he'd suggested she set herself on fire. You want me to throw you to the wolves? I want you to protect yourself. By betraying you? By being smart, strategic, all the things you're supposed to be. Ethan's throat tightened. I knew this was temporary. I knew I didn't belong in your world. This is just reality catching up to wishful thinking. No. Victoria's voice was flat, final. Absolutely not. I'm not doing that. Victoria. I said no, Ethan. She turned back to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. People have been telling me what I can and can't do my entire life. Who I should fire, who I should hire, how I should live, who I should love. And you know what I learned? The moment you start making decisions based on fear of what people will think, you've already lost. This isn't about fear, it's about reality. Reality is whatever we make it. Victoria turned back to him, something dangerous and determined in her eyes. You want to know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invite you to dinner at the most public, most photographed restaurant in Boston, and we're going to bring Lily. Ethan felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. You want to use my daughter as a prop? I want to show the world exactly what this is. Two people who became friends under extraordinary circumstances, spending time together like normal human beings. No scandal, no hidden agenda, just truth. That's insane. That's the only play we have left. We hide. They win. We fight. They write more stories. But if we just exist openly, honestly, without apology? Victoria's smile was sharp. They'll have nothing to write about except the truth. And the truth is boring. Or it backfires spectacularly and you lose everything. Then I lose everything. Victoria's voice softened. But I won't lose it by betraying someone who saved my life. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. Ethan wanted to argue, to make her see sense. But looking at her, at this brilliant, broken woman who'd somehow decided his dignity mattered more than her empire, he couldn't find the words. Okay, he said finally, but if this goes wrong, if Lily gets hurt by any of this, I'm done. Contract or no contract, I'm out. Deal. Victoria extended her hand. Partners? Ethan shook it, sealing a bargain that felt both reckless and inevitable. Partners. They made reservations for that evening at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, sent out a carefully worded press release about building friendships across socioeconomic divides, and prepared for either triumph or disaster. Ethan picked up Lily from school, his heart pounding as he explained what was about to happen. We're having dinner with the lady I helped, he told her in the car. Her name is Victoria, and there might be photographers. Lily's eyes went wide. Like celebrities? Sort of. They're interested because Victoria runs a big company and they like to take pictures of her. Will I be in the pictures? Probably. Can I wear my purple dress? Despite everything, Ethan smiled. You can wear whatever you want, sweetheart. That evening, dressed in Lily's favorite purple dress and Ethan's only good suit, they met Victoria at a botanical garden restaurant overlooking the harbor. She'd chosen the location deliberately. Beautiful, family-friendly, impossible to spin as romantic. Victoria was waiting when they arrived, wearing something simple and elegant that somehow made her look more approachable. When she saw Lily, her entire face transformed. You must be Lily. I've heard so much about you. Lily, normally shy with strangers, smiled. Are you really a billionaire? Lily! Ethan's face burned, but Victoria laughed, genuine and warm. I am. Is that impressive or disappointing? I don't know yet. My friend Kayla says billionaires have swimming pools full of money. I'm afraid I just have a regular swimming pool. Very disappointing, I know. They were seated near the windows where the sunset painted the harbor in shades of gold and amber. Cameras flashed from outside, but Victoria ignored them, focusing entirely on Lily. Your dad tells me you like science, Victoria said. I love science, especially space. Did you know that Neptune has winds that blow faster than the speed of sound? I did not know that. That's incredible. They talked about planets, school, Lily's favorite books. Victoria asked questions and listened to the answers like they mattered, like this 7-year-old's opinions on the solar system were the most important thing in the world. Watching them together, Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Victoria wasn't performing, wasn't using Lily as a prop. She was genuinely interested, genuinely present, genuinely kind. Maybe Morrison was wrong. Maybe there was more to Victoria Hale than ruthless ambition. Or maybe he was falling for the same trap everyone else did, mistaking the mask for the face. After dinner, they walked through the botanical gardens as the last light faded from the sky. Lily ran ahead, pointing at flowers and asking questions about their names. Victoria answered what she could, and when she didn't know, she admitted it without embarrassment. Thank you for this, Ethan said quietly, for trying. Don't thank me yet. We still don't know if it's going to work. Either way, it was nice. Seeing Lily smile like that, feeling normal for a couple hours. Victoria stopped walking, watching Lily examine a butterfly that had landed on a fence post. She's wonderful, Ethan. You should be proud. I am. She's the best thing I ever did. I can tell. Victoria's expression turned wistful. My father used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they achieve, but who they love and how they love them. I never really understood what he meant until now. You love your company. I love what my company represents, my father's legacy, proof that I'm capable, worth something. She looked at Ethan. But it's not the same as what you have with Lily. That's real. That's human. That's everything, Ethan finished. Yeah, everything. They stood there in the fading light, watching Lily chase fireflies between the flower beds, and for a moment the world outside didn't exist. No cameras, no headlines, no scandal, just two people trying to do right by a child who deserved better than the chaos adults had created. The moment ended when Lily ran back, breathless and happy, demanding they look at a flower she'd found that glowed in the dark. It didn't glow, of course. It just reflected the garden lights. But neither Ethan nor Victoria corrected her. They just followed her deeper into the gardens, letting her wonder guide them, and pretended they could stay in this borrowed peace forever. They couldn't, of course. By morning, the photos would be everywhere, and the real battle would begin. But for now, for these few stolen hours, they were just three people in a garden, watching fireflies dance in the summer dark. And that was enough. The photographs hit social media before the sun rose. Ethan woke to his phone buzzing with notifications, dozens of them. Messages from numbers he didn't recognize and names he barely remembered. He reached for the device with a sense of dread that had become familiar over the past 2 weeks. The images were actually beautiful. Victoria and Lily bent over a flower, their faces illuminated by soft garden lights. Ethan standing beside them, his hand resting gently on his daughter's shoulder. The three of them walking together, silhouetted against the sunset, looking for all the world like something they weren't. Like a family. The captions told a different story. Some praised Victoria for showing her human side. Others accused her of using a child for publicity. The worst ones implied that Ethan was deliberately positioning his daughter as bait, grooming her for a relationship with a billionaire who could change their lives. That last interpretation made Ethan's stomach turn. He scrolled through comment after comment, strangers debating his fitness as a parent, his motivations, his character. People who'd never met Lily discussing whether she should be removed from his care for exposing her to such an inappropriate situation. "Daddy?" Lily's voice came from the doorway, small and uncertain. "Why are you looking at your phone like that?" Ethan shut it off immediately, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "Just work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing important." "Did you sleep okay?" "I had a dream about the gardens, about the glowing flowers." She climbed onto his bed, curling against his side the way she used to when she was smaller. "Can we go back sometime?" "Maybe." Ethan wrapped his arm around her, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Did you have fun last night?" "Yeah, Victoria's really nice. She's funny too, and she knows a lot about space." Lily looked up at him with those wide, trusting eyes that could break his heart with their innocence. "Is she going to be your girlfriend?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. "No, sweetheart. She's just a friend. Someone Daddy helped, and now we're friends. That's all." "Okay." Lily seemed satisfied with that answer, which was more than Ethan could say for himself. "Can I have pancakes?" They spent the morning being deliberately normal. Pancakes with too much syrup, cartoons on the couch, a trip to the library where Lily checked out 3 books about astronomy and one about flowers that glow in the dark, just in case they were real and she'd somehow missed them. Ethan's phone stayed off. Whatever storm was brewing could wait a few hours. For now, he just wanted to be dad, uncomplicated and present and enough. But at noon, when Lily settled in for her quiet reading time, Ethan couldn't avoid it anymore. He turned on his phone and called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For underestimating how vicious they'd be. The photos were supposed to humanize us, show the truth. Instead, they're using Lily as ammunition." Victoria's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "My PR team is working on damage control, but Ethan, some of these comments, the things they're saying about you, about her, I know, I saw. I never should have suggested involving her. This is my fault." Ethan wanted to agree, to blame her, to have somewhere to direct the helpless rage building in his chest. But the truth was more complicated than that. We both made the choice. We both thought it would help. It made things worse. Maybe. Or maybe it just accelerated what was already coming. Ethan rubbed his face, exhaustion settling into his bones. "Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is there an end to this? A point where the story gets old and people move on? Or are we trapped in this forever?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. In my experience, scandals fade when something bigger comes along to replace them. But I also know that the internet never forgets. These photos, these comments, they'll be searchable forever. Every time Lily applies to college, every job interview you do, every relationship either of you tries to build, this will be there. The weight of those words settled over Ethan like a shroud. He destroyed not just his own future, but possibly Lily's, all because he'd done what he was trained to do. Save a life. Help someone in need. I think I need to step away, Ethan said quietly. From the job. From you. All of it. Ethan, listen to me. As long as I'm connected to you, this doesn't stop. The photos, the speculation, the comments about Lily. But if I quit, if I disappear back into my regular life, eventually they'll lose interest. Find a new story. Leave us alone. Running away won't fix this. Maybe not. But staying sure as hell isn't working either. Ethan's voice cracked. They're talking about taking my daughter, Victoria. Anonymous comments calling child services, questioning my judgment, my morals. One person said I was prostituting her for access to your money. How do I fight that? How do I prove that's not true when every photo, every interaction gets twisted into evidence against me? You fight by not giving them the satisfaction of breaking you, by standing your ground and telling the truth until people listen. That's easy to say when you have resources, lawyers, PR teams, power. Ethan's laugh was bitter. I have a 7-year-old who asks why people are saying mean things about her daddy. That's my resource, and I'm watching it get destroyed in real time. Victoria was silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, smaller. You're right. I can't understand what this is like for you. My armor is made of money and influence. Yours is just you. And I've put you in a position where that's not enough. So let me go. Release a statement saying we mutually agreed to part ways, wish me well, and move on with your life. Give both of us a chance to heal. What about the contract? Tear it up. I don't want your money, Victoria. I never did. I just wanted to keep my head above water long enough to figure out what came next. Ethan heard Lily moving around in her room, talking to her stuffed animals in that private language children use when they think no one's listening. But I can't keep drowning just to prove a point. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Victoria spoke, and her voice carried a resignation that matched his own. Okay, I'll have my lawyers draw up a termination agreement. Generous severance, non-disclosure on both sides, clean break. You'll have it by tomorrow. Thank you. Ethan? Victoria's voice caught. For what it's worth, meeting you and Lily was one of the few genuine things that's happened to me in years. I'm sorry I couldn't protect that. Protect you. I know, I'm sorry too. The call ended, and Ethan sat in the silence of his apartment, feeling simultaneously relieved and devastated. He'd made the right choice. The only choice. But it still felt like giving up, like letting the worst parts of the world win. By evening, the news of Ethan's resignation had leaked. Within hours, the narrative shifted again. Some outlets praised him for prioritizing his daughter over money. Others accused him of abandoning Victoria now that he'd gotten what he wanted. A few suggested the whole thing had been a scam from the beginning, that he'd deliberately saved her life knowing it would lead to exactly this kind of payday. Ethan ignored all of it. He made dinner, helped Lily with her homework, read her 3 chapters of her space book, and tucked her into bed with promises that everything would be okay. But after she fell asleep, he sat on his couch in the dark and let himself acknowledge the truth. He'd lost his job again. His savings were nearly depleted. His reputation was in ruins. And the chances of finding decent work in Boston, with his face plastered across every gossip site and news outlet, were somewhere between slim and non-existent. He was going to have to move. Start over somewhere new, somewhere Lily could go to school without other kids asking if her daddy really kissed a billionaire for money. Somewhere they could build a life free from the wreckage of his one good deed. The knock on his door came just after 10. Ethan considered not answering, but the knock came again, more insistent, and he didn't want it to wake Lily. Through the peephole, he saw Victoria. She stood in his hallway looking nothing like the polished executive he'd come to know. Her hair was down, unstyled. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. No makeup, no armor. Ethan opened the door. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you. Please, 5 minutes." Every instinct told him to send her away, to maintain the distance they'd just established. But something in her expression stopped him. She looked desperate. broken. 5 minutes, he agreed, stepping aside to let her in. Victoria entered his small apartment, and Ethan saw it through her eyes. The worn furniture, the toys scattered in one corner, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter that he kept meaning to organize. It was a different world from her penthouse, from her office, from everything she knew. "I lied to you," Victoria said without preamble, "when I said I'd let you go, that I'd accept your resignation. I can't. I won't." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You don't get to decide that." "I know, but hear me out, please." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I spent the afternoon going through everything, every article, every comment, every photo, and I found something, a pattern. Victoria, just listen. The worst stories, the ones with the most damaging implications, they're all coming from the same sources. Media outlets that have ties to my Uncle Richard's investment portfolio, reporters who've written hit pieces on me before, photographers who work for agencies he has connections with." Her eyes locked onto his. "This isn't random, Ethan. It's coordinated. My uncle is orchestrating this." Ethan stared at her. "Why would he do that?" "Because you're a weakness he can exploit, a way to make me look unstable, distracted, compromised. If he can damage my reputation badly enough, the board might vote to remove me as CEO. And guess who's next in line? That's insane." "That's my family." Victoria's laugh was hollow. "I've been so focused on managing the scandal that I missed the bigger picture. This isn't about you or me or what happened in that car. It's about power, control, and Richard will destroy anyone who gets between him and what he thinks he deserves." Ethan wanted to dismiss it as paranoid conspiracy thinking, but he'd seen enough in the past 2 weeks to know that Victoria's world operated on different rules than his own. Even if that's true, what does it change? The damage is done. People still think I'm using you, that you're using me, that Lily is somehow caught in the middle of something inappropriate. It changes everything, because if we can prove Richard is behind this, we expose him. And once he's exposed, the rest of it falls apart. The stories lose credibility. The narrative shifts from scandal to manipulation. Victoria stepped closer. "We can fight back, Ethan, but only if we do it together." "By what? Hiring investigators? Lawyers? Fighting a PR war I can't afford and don't understand?" Ethan shook his head. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't. I have to think about Lily, and every day I spend connected to you is another day she has to hear people say terrible things about her father. What if I could make it stop? Not eventually, not maybe, but now. Completely." "How?" Victoria pulled out her phone, showed him something. It was an email chain, dozens of messages between Richard Hale and various media contacts discussing strategy and pressure points and maximizing the Cole situation. "My head of security found these this afternoon. Richard's been sloppy, overconfident. He didn't encrypt his communications properly." Victoria's smile was sharp and dangerous. "This is proof. Concrete, undeniable evidence that he's been orchestrating a campaign against both of us." Ethan read through the messages, his disbelief growing with each one. Richard hadn't just planted stories, he'd paid for them, hired private investigators to dig into Ethan's background, even arranged for the photographer outside Victoria's apartment building. This is illegal. Conspiracy, fraud, probably a dozen other things I don't have names for. It is, which means I have leverage. I confront Richard with this, threaten to expose him publicly, and press charges, and he backs off. Completely. No more stories, no more photos, no more harassment. He leaves us alone, or I destroy him. And what about the stories that already exist? The damage that's already done? I hold a press conference, tell the whole truth, show people that we're victims of a coordinated attack by someone with a financial incentive to hurt me. The narrative changes overnight from scandal to sympathy. Victoria's eyes were bright with determination. "I can fix this, Ethan, but I need you to trust me, one more time." Ethan wanted to believe her, wanted to think that there was a way out of this nightmare that didn't involve running away and starting over. But trust required more than good intentions. "Why does this matter so much to you?" he asked. "You could just let me go. Let the story die down. Protect yourself and your company without all this risk. Why are you fighting so hard for someone you barely know?" Victoria's composure cracked, And for the first time since entering his apartment, she looked vulnerable. Because you're the first person in 10 years who did something for me without wanting anything in return. Because when I was dying in your car, you didn't think about liability or reward or what it would cost you. You just acted. You just saved me. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. And because letting Richard destroy you for that would make me complicit in something unforgivable. I can't live with that. I won't. The raw honesty in her words cut through Ethan's defenses. He saw her clearly then, not as a billionaire or a CEO or some untouchable figure from a different world, but as a person. Flawed and struggling and trying desperately to do the right thing despite not always knowing what that was. "What do you need from me?" he asked quietly. "Stand with me. When I confront Richard, when I hold the press conference, when the whole thing goes public. Don't hide, don't run. Just stand there and let people see that you have nothing to be ashamed of." Victoria's gaze was steady. "Can you do that?" Ethan thought about Lily sleeping in the next room, about the life he wanted to give her, built on truth and integrity and the belief that doing right mattered. If he ran now, what lesson would that teach her? That helping people was dangerous? That the world punished kindness? "Okay," he said, "I'm in. But Victoria, if this goes wrong, if it makes things worse for Lily, I'm done. No second chances. I take her and I disappear, and you don't try to find us." "Understood." Victoria extended her hand. "Partners. One last time." Ethan shook it, sealing an agreement that felt both reckless and necessary. The confrontation with Richard Hale happened the next morning in Victoria's office. Ethan stood near the windows while Victoria sat behind her desk, the printed emails arranged neatly in front of her. When Richard arrived, flanked by his own lawyer, his expression was smug. "This better be important, Victoria. I have actual work to do." "Sit down, Uncle Richard." Victoria's voice was ice. Something in her tone made Richard pause. He sat, his lawyer settling beside him. "What's this about?" Victoria slid the emails across the desk. "It's about you orchestrating a harassment campaign against an employee of this company. It's about you paying reporters to plant false stories. It's about you violating about a dozen state and federal laws because you can't accept that I'm better at running this company than you'd ever be." Richard's face went pale as he scanned the documents. His lawyer leaned over, reading quickly, his expression shifting from confused to alarmed. "Where did you get these?" Richard's voice had lost its confidence. "That's irrelevant. What matters is that I have them, and I'm prepared to release them to the authorities and the press unless you agree to my terms." "You're threatening me?" "I'm offering you a choice. You resign from the board immediately, citing personal reasons. You liquidate your shares in Hale Industries within 6 months. You sign a binding agreement never to interfere with this company or its employees again. And you publicly apologize for your role in spreading false information about Ethan Cole." Victoria's smile was cold. "Or I press charges, release these emails, and watch your reputation burn. Your choice." Richard's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. Richard's face went from pale to red, anger and humiliation warring across his features. "You self-righteous little—" "Careful, Uncle Richard. Everything you say right now is being recorded." Victoria gestured to a small device on her desk. "For legal purposes, of course." Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You think you've won? You think forcing me out changes anything? The world still sees you as a joke, Victoria, a billionaire who fell for her driver's sob story. Weak, pathetic, exactly what I always knew you were. The world will see what I show them, and what I'm going to show them is a woman who protected an innocent person from a corrupt board member's schemes. That's not weakness, Uncle Richard. That's strength." Victoria stood as well, meeting his eyes without flinching. "You have 24 hours to accept the terms. After that, I go public with everything. Clock's ticking." Richard stormed out, his lawyer scrambling to follow. The door slammed behind them and silence filled the office. Ethan exhaled slowly. That was terrifying. That was necessary. Victoria's hands were shaking slightly as she gathered the emails. "He'll accept the terms. He has to. The alternative is prison and complete social destruction. And if he doesn't, then we follow through. I expose him, deal with the fallout, and rebuild from there." She met Ethan's eyes. "But either way, this ends. Today. No more living under his manipulation. The press conference was scheduled for that afternoon. Victoria's PR team worked frantically to prepare statements, coordinate with friendly media outlets, and manage the narrative. Ethan sat in a small office, watching the controlled chaos, feeling like a spectator at his own life. Sarah Chen brought him coffee and a sympathetic smile. "You're brave, you know. Not many people would stand up against someone like Richard Hale." "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of running." "Sometimes that's the same thing." At 3 o'clock, Ethan stood beside Victoria in a conference room filled with reporters, cameras, and the harsh glare of studio lights. His hands were sweating, his heart raced, every instinct screamed at him to run, but he stayed. Victoria stepped up to the microphone, her presence commanding immediate silence. "Thank you all for coming. I have a statement to make regarding recent media coverage of my personal life and the life of my employee, Ethan Cole." She spoke clearly and without hesitation, laying out the facts. The medical emergency, the CPR that saved her life, the decision to hire Ethan based on his qualifications and character, and then the revelations about Richard's campaign. My uncle, Richard Hale, orchestrated a deliberate harassment campaign designed to damage my reputation and Mr. Cole's life. He paid for false stories. He hired investigators to dig up dirt that didn't exist. He weaponized the media against two people whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the right time. Victoria's voice hardened. "This morning, I presented him with evidence of his actions. He has resigned from the board of Hale Industries, effective immediately." The room erupted. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, the controlled chaos of breaking news. Victoria raised a hand, waiting for quiet. "Mr. Cole saved my life. That is a fact. Nothing that's been said or written changes that truth. He asked for nothing in return, expected nothing. And he's been punished for it by people who can't comprehend doing something good without an ulterior motive." She turned to look at Ethan. "I owe him more than I can ever repay. And I won't let his kindness be twisted into something ugly by people with agendas." A reporter stood. "Miss Hale, are you and Mr. Cole in a romantic relationship?" "No, we're friends. That's all we've ever been." "Then why all the secrecy? The private meetings?" "There was no secrecy. I invited him to my home to discuss business. We had dinner at a public restaurant with his daughter. Every action we've taken has been above board. The only thing secret was Richard's campaign to make those normal interactions look suspicious." Another reporter. "Mr. Cole, do you have anything to say?" Ethan stepped forward, his mouth dry. He'd never been good at public speaking, but Victoria's courage gave him strength. "I'm a single dad who drives for a living. I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I just did what I was trained to do when someone needed help." His voice steadied. "What happened after that, the stories and the accusations and the attacks on my character, that's been the hardest thing I've ever faced. But it taught me something important. The world will always try to punish goodness if it can't understand it. And I refuse to let that change who I am." He stepped back and Victoria fielded more questions, her answers precise and devastating. By the time the press conference ended, the narrative had shifted. Social media exploded with support for both of them, outrage at Richard's manipulation, and demands for accountability. It worked. Victoria's gamble had actually worked, but the victory felt hollow as Ethan drove home that evening, exhausted and overwhelmed. The press conference had been a success, yes, but it had also made everything more real, more public, more permanent. His phone rang. Unknown number. Ethan almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Cole, this is Principal Henderson from Lily's school." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Is she okay? What happened?" "Lily's fine, physically. But there was an incident today. Some parents have raised concerns about the recent media attention, and we've had reporters trying to access school grounds. For Lily's safety and the safety of other students, we think it might be best if she takes a few days off until things settle down." "You're suspending her?" "We're suggesting a temporary leave for everyone's benefit." "She didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong." "I understand, Mr. Cole, but the situation has become disruptive. We have to think about the whole school community." The call ended, and Ethan sat in his car outside his apartment building, staring at nothing. They were kicking Lily out of school. Not permanently, not officially, but effectively. because her father had committed the unforgivable sin of saving someone's life and then being seen with them in public. The unfairness of it crushed him. The press conference, the exposure of Richard's schemes, Victoria's support, none of it mattered, because the damage was done. Lily's life was being disrupted, her routine destroyed, her sense of safety and normalcy shattered, and Ethan couldn't fix it. He went upstairs, paid the babysitter, and found Lily in her room, drawing pictures of space. She looked up when he entered, and her smile was like a knife to his heart. "Daddy, guess what? My teacher said I might get to stay home for a few days, like a vacation." "Yeah, sweetheart, a little vacation." Ethan knelt beside her, forcing himself to smile. "That sound fun?" "Kind of, but I'll miss my friends." Her expression turned uncertain. "Daddy, are people still saying mean things about you?" "Some people are, but not everyone. And the people who matter know the truth." "I know the truth too. You're the best daddy in the whole world." Ethan pulled her into a hug, holding her tight against his chest while she squirmed and giggled. "I love you, Lily, more than anything. You know that, right?" "I know. I love you too." That night, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan stood at his window, looking out at Boston's lights, and made a decision. The press conference had helped, but it wasn't enough. As long as he remained in Victoria's orbit, as long as their lives stayed entangled, Lily would keep paying the price. He had to end it. Not just the job, but everything. The friendship, the connection, all of it, for Lily's sake. Ethan pulled out his phone and typed a message to Victoria. "I need to step away completely. For Lily. I'm sorry. Thank you for everything, but I can't do this anymore." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The response came almost immediately. "I understand. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you both better. If you ever need anything, call me. I mean that." Another message followed. "You're a good father, Ethan. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." Ethan set his phone down and let the finality of it wash over him. It was done. He'd severed the last tie to Victoria's world, chosen his daughter over everything else, made the only decision a good parent could make. So why did it feel like he'd lost something irreplaceable? The next few days passed in a blur. Ethan kept Lily home, told her they were going on an adventure, and started looking at apartments in other cities. Somewhere cheaper, quieter, where nobody would recognize his face or care about his story. He avoided the news, avoided social media, avoided everything that might pull him back into the chaos. It was easier to move forward when you didn't look back. But on the fourth day, while Lily was napping, Ethan's phone rang. Victoria. He almost didn't answer, but something in him couldn't ignore her completely. Not yet. "Hello?" "Ethan, I need you to listen to me carefully." Victoria's voice was strained, urgent. "Richard didn't accept the terms. He's fighting back. And he's planning something big. Something that could hurt both of us. Victoria, I told you I'm out. Whatever Richard does, you'll have to handle it without me. He's going after Lily. Not legally, not directly, but he's feeding stories to child services. Anonymous reports about your fitness as a parent, allegations that you're exposing her to inappropriate situations. They're opening an investigation." The world stopped. "What?" "I just found out an hour ago. My lawyers are trying to intervene, but Ethan, this is serious. If Child Services decides there's merit to the claims, they could remove Lily from your custody pending investigation." Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The one thing he'd been trying to prevent, the worst possible outcome, was happening anyway. "This is your fault," he said, his voice hollow. "Everything. All of it. If I'd never gotten in that car, if you just died like you were supposed to, Lily would be safe. We'd be fine. Normal." "Ethan, no. You don't get to apologize. You don't get to make this better. You brought me into your world, promised to protect us. And now my daughter might be taken away because your uncle is a sociopath and you couldn't stop him." His hands were shaking. "Stay away from us, Victoria. I mean it. Don't call. Don't text. Don't try to help. You've done enough." He hung up and immediately called his lawyer, a public defender he'd consulted once about custody issues after his divorce. She listened to his frantic explanation and promised to look into it. "But Mr. Cole, I have to be honest. If Child Services has opened an investigation, fighting it could make things worse, especially with your current media profile. The best thing you can do is cooperate fully, show that you're a responsible parent, and wait for them to conclude there's no merit to the claims." And if they don't conclude that? If they decide the media circus around me is harmful to Lily? The lawyer was quiet. Then we fight. But Ethan, you should prepare for the possibility that they might recommend temporary foster care while the investigation proceeds. It's rare, but given the high-profile nature of the situation. Ethan hung up and stared at his daughter's bedroom door. Beyond it, Lily slept peacefully, unaware that her entire world might be about to collapse. He'd saved Victoria's life, and it had cost him everything that mattered. The bitter irony wasn't lost on him. In trying to protect Lily by distancing himself from Victoria, he'd left himself vulnerable to exactly the attack he'd been trying to prevent. Richard had found his weakness and exploited it perfectly. Ethan walked to Lily's room, stood in the doorway watching her sleep, and felt something inside him break. Not dramatically, not with anger or rage, just a quiet fracture, the sound of hope dying. He'd done everything right. Saved a life, told the truth, tried to be a good person, and the world had punished him for it at every turn. Maybe Morrison had been right. Maybe in Victoria's world, there was no room for simple goodness. Maybe kindness was just another commodity to be bought, sold, and weaponized. Outside, Boston slept, indifferent to one man's quiet devastation. The city had seen 1,000 tragedies like his, 1,000 good people ground down by forces beyond their control. Ethan was just another casualty of a war he'd never wanted to fight. But as he stood there, watching his daughter sleep, something hardened in his chest, a resolve he didn't know he possessed. Richard Hale wanted to take Lily? Wanted to destroy what little Ethan had left? Then Ethan would fight back, not with Victoria's money or power or influence, but with the one weapon he'd always had and never fully appreciated, the truth. The simple, undeniable, documented truth that he was a good father, that Lily was safe, loved, and thriving, that the media circus wasn't his fault and didn't define him. Child Services wanted to investigate? Fine, let them. They'd find nothing because there was nothing to find. Richard wanted a war? He'd get one, but not the kind he expected. Ethan would fight with patience, with documentation, with every report card and doctor's visit and teacher conference that proved Lily was happy and healthy and exactly where she belonged. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And real, Ethan was learning, was the only thing that lasted when everything else burned away. He wouldn't run, wouldn't hide, wouldn't let fear make his decisions anymore. Whatever came next, he'd face it standing up, for Lily, for himself, for the principle that doing good shouldn't require this much sacrifice. The storm wasn't over, maybe it was just beginning, but Ethan Cole had learned something in these brutal weeks. He was stronger than he thought, more resilient, more capable of enduring than he'd ever imagined. And if the world wanted to test that strength, he was ready. The Child Services investigator arrived on a Tuesday morning, clipboard in hand, and eyes that had seen too many broken homes to trust anyone on first impression. Her name was Margaret Chen, and she introduced herself with professional courtesy that felt like ice. Mr. Cole, I'm here to conduct a preliminary assessment regarding the anonymous reports filed concerning your daughter's welfare. May I come in? Ethan stepped aside, his heart hammering. The apartment was immaculate. He'd spent the past 3 days cleaning, organizing, making sure every surface shined with the desperate hope that appearances might matter. Of course, Lily's in her room doing homework. Should I get her? In a moment. First, I'd like to speak with you alone. Margaret settled on the couch, her gaze sweeping the space with practiced efficiency. I've reviewed the reports. They allege that you've exposed your daughter to inappropriate relationships, unstable living conditions, and media harassment that creates an unsafe environment. What's your response to these allegations? They're lies. All of them. Ethan sat across from her, forcing himself to maintain eye contact. Lily has never been in an unsafe environment. I've shielded her from as much of the media attention as possible. And the only relationship she's been exposed to is a friendship with someone who's been nothing but kind to her. Victoria Hale. Yes. Margaret made a note. The reports suggest this relationship is inappropriate given the power dynamics in media speculation. The media speculation is manufactured by someone with a vendetta against Victoria. There's documented evidence that her uncle orchestrated a harassment campaign. Victoria held a press conference exposing it. Ethan pulled out his phone, showed her the news coverage. Everything that's happened to us has been the result of one man's manipulation, not anything I've done wrong." "I see." Margaret's expression didn't change. "And you believe that distinction protects your daughter? That the source of the chaos matters more than its impact on her well-being?" The question hit like a slap. "I believe that I'm doing everything I can to protect her from a situation I didn't create and can't fully control. But I'm not going to apologize for saving someone's life. That's not something any child should grow up thinking was wrong. No one's asking you to apologize, Mr. Cole, but I need to assess whether the current environment is stable and safe for a 7-year-old girl." Margaret's tone softened slightly. "May I speak with Lily now?" Ethan called his daughter out, and Lily emerged from her room with her spacebook tucked under one arm, curious but not afraid. She was good with strangers, confident in the safety her father had always provided. Margaret's demeanor shifted completely when she spoke to Lily. The coldness melted into warmth, and she asked about school, friends, favorite activities. Lily chatted easily about her books, her drawings, the telescope Ethan had saved up to buy her last Christmas. "Do you feel safe at home, Lily?" Margaret asked gently. "Yeah, Daddy makes sure everything's okay. He checks the windows at night and always makes breakfast, even when he's tired. Are there ever times when you feel scared or worried?" Lily considered this seriously. "Sometimes I worry about the mean things people say about Daddy. I don't understand why they're so mad at him. He just helped someone." "Do those mean things make you feel unsafe?" "No, just sad. Because Daddy's the best and they don't know him." Lily looked at Ethan with absolute trust. "He saved someone's life. That's what heroes do." Margaret spent another 30 minutes going through questions, examining Lily's room, reviewing school records Ethan had prepared. When she finally closed her clipboard, her expression was unreadable. "I'll file my preliminary report within 48 hours. Until then, maintain your current routine. If I have additional questions, I'll be in touch." After she left, Ethan held Lily close, breathing in her strawberry shampoo scent and fighting the urge to pack everything they owned and disappear. But running would only confirm the accusations. He had to trust that the truth would be enough. It had to be. That evening, while Lily watched a documentary about Mars, Ethan's phone rang. Not Victoria this time, but a number he didn't recognize. He almost sent it to voicemail, but answered at the last second. "Mr. Cole? This is Amanda Torres from the Atlantic Journal. I'm working on a story about Richard Hale's harassment campaign, and I'd love to get your perspective." "I'm not interested in giving interviews." "I understand your hesitation, but this isn't a hit piece. I've been investigating Richard Hale for months, long before your situation came to light. He has a pattern of weaponizing media against people who threaten his interests. You're not the first person he's targeted, just the most visible." Ethan paused. "What do you mean, not the first?" "I found 3 other cases, former business partners, a whistleblower who reported financial irregularities, even a family friend who sided with Victoria in an inheritance dispute. In each case, Richard orchestrated media campaigns to destroy their credibility. 2 of them lost their jobs. One filed for bankruptcy fighting defamation suits that eventually got dismissed but cost everything they had. The information settled over Ethan like a weight. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to expose him, fully. Not just what happened with you and Victoria, but the whole pattern of abuse. But I need people willing to go on record, victims who'll stand up and tell their stories." Amanda's voice was earnest, almost pleading. "I know you have every reason to stay quiet. But if we can show this is systemic, not isolated, it changes everything. Richard doesn't just get pushed out of one company. He gets held accountable for years of manipulation. And what does going on record cost me? More media attention, more ammunition for child services to use against me? Possibly, but it also gives context. Right now, you're a cautionary tale, a guy who got mixed up with the wrong billionaire. But if you're one of multiple victims in a larger pattern, you become evidence of something bigger, a witness, not a scandal." Ethan wanted to say no, wanted to protect what little privacy he had left, shield Lily from more exposure, just survive until the storm passed. But Amanda was right. Silence meant letting Richard win, meant letting him do this to someone else, somewhere down the line, because no one had been brave enough to stop him. "I need to think about it," Ethan said finally. Of course. I'll email you information about the other victims. You can reach out to them if you want to verify my story. No pressure. But Mr. Cole, what you did, saving Victoria's life, that took courage. This would too. Different kind maybe, but just as important. The call ended, and Ethan sat with the decision weighing on him. Every choice seemed to lead to more exposure, more risk, more chances for everything to fall apart. But maybe that was the point. Maybe there was no safe path, only the choice between hiding and fighting. 2 days later, Margaret Chen's report arrived via email. Ethan read it with shaking hands, Lily safely at school so she wouldn't see his reaction if it was bad. The conclusion came on page 7. No evidence of neglect, abuse, or unsafe living conditions. Child appears healthy, well-adjusted, and securely attached to primary caregiver. Media attention appears to be diminishing. Recommend case closure pending 6-month follow-up to ensure stability maintained. Ethan read it 3 times before he believed it. They weren't taking Lily. The investigation was essentially over. He'd won. The relief was so intense it made him dizzy. He called his lawyer, who confirmed that this was the best possible outcome short of the case being dismissed entirely. The 6-month follow-up is standard procedure. Just maintain what you're doing, keep records of Lily's school attendance, medical checkups, everything that demonstrates stability. By this time next year, this will all be behind you. Next year felt impossibly far away, but it was something. A timeline. An endpoint. Ethan picked up Lily from school that afternoon and took her for ice cream, celebrating privately a victory he couldn't fully explain to her. "Why are you so happy, Daddy?" Lily asked, chocolate ice cream on her nose. "Because things are getting better. The hard part is almost over." "Does that mean we don't have to move?" The question surprised him. "You knew we were thinking about moving? I heard you on the phone, looking at apartments in other cities." Lily's expression turned serious. "I don't want to move. I like my school, and my friends, and Victoria. She's nice." "I know, sweetheart, and we're not moving. We're staying right here." Lily's smile was brilliant. "Good, because I'm doing a project about space and I need to use the big telescope at the Science Museum next month." Simple things, normal things. The everyday concerns of a 7-year-old whose biggest worry was a school project. This was what Ethan had been fighting for. Not vindication or victory over Richard Hale, but the right for his daughter to be a kid. That evening, Ethan made his decision. He called Amanda Torres and agreed to an on-the-record interview. If there was even a chance it would prevent Richard from doing this to someone else, it was worth the risk. The interview took place at a coffee shop in Cambridge, neutral territory where neither Ethan nor Amanda would draw attention. She recorded everything on her phone, asking questions that started gentle and grew progressively harder. "When did you first realize Richard Hale was behind the harassment campaign?" "When Victoria showed me the emails. Before that, I just thought it was bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time." "How did it feel learning that someone was deliberately trying to destroy your life?" Ethan considered the question carefully. "Like I'd been fighting a ghost. All this time I thought it was random cruelty. People judging what they didn't understand. Finding out it was orchestrated. It made it worse in some ways, but also better because at least there was a reason. Not a good reason, but something." Richard Hale has resources most people can't imagine. Power, money, connections. How do you fight someone like that when you're just an ordinary person trying to live your life? You tell the truth. Over and over. To anyone who'll listen. You document everything. You refuse to let them rewrite your story. Ethan met her eyes. "And you accept that sometimes the truth isn't enough. Sometimes powerful people win anyway. But you tell it regardless, because silence is surrender." Amanda's questions grew more pointed. She asked about the child services investigation, the impact on Lily, the moments when Ethan had considered giving up entirely. He answered honestly, holding nothing back because sanitizing the story would only diminish it. "Do you regret saving Victoria Hale's life?" Amanda asked near the end. The question hung in the air between them. Ethan thought about everything that had happened. The job loss, the media attacks, the threats to Lily, the absolute chaos that one moment of doing the right thing had unleashed. "No," he said finally. "I regret that saving her life led to all this. I regret that doing something good gave bad people ammunition. But I don't regret the choice itself. Because in that moment, there was only one choice. Let her die or try to save her, and I'll never be the kind of person who chooses to let someone die. Even knowing what it would cost you? Even then. The article ran 2 weeks later, and it was everything Amanda had promised. A comprehensive exposé of Richard Hale's pattern of harassment, backed by testimony from Ethan and 3 other victims, supported by documentation that was impossible to dismiss. The Atlantic Journal didn't just report the story, they built a case. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Other victims came forward. Reporters dug deeper into Richard's business dealings. Federal investigators announced they were looking into possible RICO violations. Within days, Richard Hale went from powerful board member to pariah. Victoria called Ethan the day the article published. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Put yourself out there again, risk more exposure." "Yeah, I did. For the same reason I gave you CPR. Because it was the right thing to do." The article was devastating, to Richard, to everyone who enabled him. Victoria paused. "Thank you, Ethan, for having the courage I couldn't find. You held a press conference, exposed him first. Don't sell yourself short." That was self-preservation. What you did was different. You had nothing to gain and everything to lose, and you did it anyway. Her voice dropped. "I'm starting to understand why you saved my life. It's just who you are." "How are you holding up?" Ethan asked. "Better. The board has been supportive. Now that Richard's crimes are public, people are rallying behind me instead of questioning my judgment. It's almost like they need a clear villain to understand the story." She laughed bitterly. "I hate that it took all this to get here. But at least we're here." What happens to Richard now? Legal proceedings, probably criminal charges, civil suits from his other victims. His life as he knew it is over. Victoria didn't sound triumphant, just tired. "I wanted him gone, but I didn't want it like this. Despite everything, he's still family. Family that tried to destroy you." "I know, but it still hurts." They talked for a few more minutes, the conversation easier than it had been in weeks. When it ended, Ethan felt something shift. The anger and resentment he'd been carrying toward Victoria began to ease. She'd been as much a victim of Richard's schemes as he had, just with better armor. The weeks that followed brought a strange kind of peace. The media moved on to other scandals. The attacks on social media diminished. Ethan's phone stopped ringing with reporters looking for statements. Slowly, carefully, life began to return to something resembling normal. Lily went back to school full-time. Her classmates stopped asking about Victoria and billionaires and started caring about normal kid things again. Ethan found work with a local emergency preparedness company, teaching CPR and first aid to corporate clients. The pay was decent, the work meaningful, and nobody cared about his brief brush with fame. One evening, 3 months after the Atlantic Journal article, Victoria called with an unexpected proposition. "I'm starting a foundation," she said, "focused on supporting single parents who've faced hardship, job training, legal aid, emergency financial assistance, all the things that could have helped you when everything fell apart." "That's incredible, Victoria. I want you to be involved, not as an employee," she added quickly, "as a board member, someone who actually understands what these families are going through, someone who can make sure we're helping people the right way, not just throwing money at problems." Ethan was quiet, considering. "Why me?" "Because you lived it, because you fought through it, and because I trust you to tell me when I'm being too detached or theoretical." Victoria's tone softened. "Also because I think you'd be good at it. Helping people is what you do, Ethan. This would just be a bigger platform. I'd have to think about it, make sure it wouldn't bring more attention to Lily." "Of course. Take all the time you need. The foundation isn't launching for another 6 months, but I wanted you to know you have a place in it if you want one." After the call, Ethan sat on his couch and thought about the offer. A few months ago, he would have said no immediately. Anything that kept him connected to Victoria felt dangerous. But things were different now, calmer. The storm had passed, leaving wreckage, but also clarity. Maybe there was a way to take something good from all the chaos, to help other people avoid the pitfalls he'd stumbled into, or at least navigate them better. He'd give it serious thought. The real turning point came on a Saturday morning in late autumn. Ethan was making pancakes while Lily set the table, their weekend ritual, when someone knocked on the door. Pull! When, through the peephole, he saw Victoria standing in the hallway, looking uncertain. an expression he'd rarely seen on her face. She wore jeans and a sweater, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Civilian clothes, Ethan thought, not the armor of business. He opened the door. Everything okay? I should have called first. I'm sorry. I was in the neighborhood and thought. Victoria trailed off, uncharacteristically flustered. This was a mistake. I'll go. Victoria, it's fine. Come in. Ethan stepped aside. We're just making pancakes. Have you eaten? I don't want to intrude. You're not. Lily will be excited to see you. And she was. Lily's face lit up when she saw Victoria, and within minutes she was showing off her latest school project, a model of the solar system made from painted styrofoam balls. This is Jupiter, Lily explained seriously. It's the biggest planet, and this little one is Mercury. It's closest to the sun, so it's really hot. Victoria listened with genuine interest, asking questions, admiring Lily's work. When breakfast was ready, they all sat together at Ethan's small kitchen table, and for the first time since that night in the car, everything felt normal. I actually came by for a reason, Victoria said as they finished eating. Not just to intrude on your Saturday. You're not intruding, Ethan said again. I'm holding a small event next month, a fundraiser for the foundation. Very low-key, mostly friends and family. I was hoping you and Lily might come, both of you, she added, looking at Lily. I thought it might be nice to show people what the foundation is really about. Not just theory, but actual families. Lily looked at her father with hopeful eyes. Can we, Daddy? Please? Ethan hesitated. Public events still made him nervous, but Victoria was right. If they were going to be involved with the foundation, hiding didn't make sense. Okay, he said, we'll come. Victoria's smile was genuine and relieved. Thank you, both of you. After breakfast, they walked to a nearby park. It was a beautiful autumn day, the leaves turning gold and crimson, the air crisp without being cold. Lily ran ahead to the playground while Ethan and Victoria followed at a slower pace. I've been thinking about what you said, Victoria began, about how I couldn't understand what it was like to be you, to have no armor. Victoria, let me finish. You were right. I've spent so long protected by money and power that I forgot what it's like to be vulnerable, to have everything on the line with no safety net. She watched Lily climb the monkey bars. But these past few months taught me something. Armor doesn't actually protect you from the things that matter. It just isolates you from them. I don't understand. When Richard attacked us, I threw everything I had at the problem. Lawyers, PR teams, investigators, all my resources. And they helped, but they didn't fix it. You know what actually fixed it? Victoria turned to look at him. You. Going on record, telling your truth without any protection. That's what broke through, not my power, your courage. I didn't feel courageous, I felt terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Victoria's expression turned serious. I want to be more like that. More like you. Someone who does the right thing even when it's hard. You already are that person. You just forget sometimes. Maybe, Victoria managed a small smile. I'm trying to remember more often. They stood there watching Lily play, and Ethan realized something. The woman beside him wasn't the untouchable billionaire from the news or the powerful CEO from the boardroom. She was just Victoria, flawed and struggling and trying to be better, just like him. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly, for what I said when I found out about the Child Services investigation. That you should have died. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. In that moment, you absolutely meant it. Victoria's voice was gentle, understanding. And I don't blame you. I'd have thought the same thing if someone's actions put my child at risk. But it wasn't your fault. It was Richard's. I know that now. Fault is complicated. Richard orchestrated it, but my presence in your life made it possible. Both things can be true. She watched Lily reach the top of the climbing structure and wave triumphantly. I'm just grateful we survived it. All of us. The fundraiser the following month was held at a botanical garden, the same one where they'd had dinner months ago, though the space was transformed now. White lights hung from the trees, musicians played soft jazz. People in expensive clothes mingled with drinks, discussing the foundation's mission and writing checks with zeros. Ethan couldn't quite wrap his mind around. He and Lily arrived together, both nervous, both dressed in their best. Victoria met them at the entrance, resplendent in a navy gown, but somehow still approachable. "You came," she said, relief evident. "We promised," Ethan replied. The evening passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. Victoria made sure to introduce Ethan not as the driver or the man who saved my life, but simply as my friend Ethan, who'll be joining the foundation board. It was a small thing, but it mattered. It gave him dignity, identity beyond the scandal. Lily was a hit with the guests, charming them with her knowledge of space and her enthusiastic descriptions of the foundation's mission as she understood it. Watching her confidence, seeing her smile without shadows, Ethan felt the last of his fear begin to ease. They'd made it through. Despite everything, despite the attacks and the chaos and the moments when it felt like the world was crushing them, they'd survived. Near the end of the evening, Victoria took the stage to give a speech. She talked about the foundation's goals, the gap in services for struggling parents, the importance of supporting families through crisis. "This foundation exists because I learned something important this year," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the garden. "I learned that helping someone in need shouldn't come with consequences, that kindness shouldn't be punished, and that the people who do the right thing, even when it costs them everything, deserve our support." Her eyes found Ethan in the crowd. "Someone once saved my life without asking for anything in return. This foundation is my attempt to pay forward that gift, to help others the way I was helped. Not out of obligation, but out of gratitude for the reminder that goodness still exists in the world." The applause was warm and genuine. People approached Ethan afterward, thanking him for his service, his courage, his willingness to stand up against Richard Hale. It was overwhelming but also healing. After months of being attacked, being seen as a hero again felt like coming home. As the event wound down and guests began to leave, Ethan found Victoria standing by the fountain where they'd walked months ago. "Thank you," she said, "for coming, for everything. Thank you for giving us something to come to, something positive instead of just survival. Is that what we're doing now, moving past survival?" Ethan considered the question. "I think so, finally." Victoria looked out at the garden, at the lights reflecting in the water, at Lily chasing fireflies with another child near the rose bushes. "I keep thinking about that night, in the car, how scared I was, how certain I was going to die. You almost did. But I didn't, because you were there, because you knew what to do and you did it without hesitation." She turned to face him. "Do you know what I thought about in those last seconds before everything went dark?" "What?" "That I'd wasted so much time, building empires and fighting battles and trying to prove I was worthy of something I already had. My father's love, my own respect." Her voice caught. "I thought about all the moments I'd missed because I was too busy being important. You didn't waste anything. You built something incredible. Maybe. But I also realized something dying in that car. The things that actually mattered, kindness, connection, human decency, those were the things I'd neglected. The things I'd convinced myself were luxuries I couldn't afford." Victoria's smile was sad. "And then you saved me. Not because it would benefit you. Not because I could pay you or promote you or give you anything, just because it was the right thing to do. And I realized I'd forgotten what that looked like." "You didn't forget. You've been fighting for what's right this whole time. In business, maybe. In the abstract. But not in life. Not in the small daily choices that define who we actually are." She gestured to the foundation's banner. "This is me trying to remember. To be the person who does right by people instead of just doing right by shareholders." Ethan understood then what the foundation really was. Not charity or publicity or even genuine altruism, though it was all those things. It was Victoria's attempt at redemption, her way of proving to herself that she could be more than just powerful, that she could be good. "You're going to help a lot of people," he said. "I hope so, with your help. You have it, for as long as you need it." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching Lily laugh with her new friend, and Ethan felt the final piece of the nightmare slip away. The fear, the anger, the sense that the world was fundamentally unfair. It was still unfair. Still brutal to people who couldn't defend themselves. Still willing to punish goodness when it was inconvenient. But it also had moments like this. Gardens lit by stars and kindness, children laughing, people trying to be better than they were. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Victoria's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, her expression shifting to concern. "Ethan, you should see this." She showed him the screen. A news alert. Richard Hale had been arrested. Federal charges including wire fraud, conspiracy, and witness intimidation. The investigation that had started with Amanda Torres's article had culminated in something far bigger than anyone expected. "He's really gone," Victoria whispered. "It's really over." Ethan read the article, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Relief that Richard couldn't hurt anyone else. Sadness that it had come to this. And underneath it all, a quiet satisfaction that justice had actually prevailed. "How do you feel?" he asked Victoria. "Honestly, relieved, and a little bit broken." She closed her phone. "He was family, terrible family, but still, and now he'll probably spend years in prison. Part of me knows he deserves it. Part of me just feels sad." "That's normal. You can be angry at someone and still grieve what they could have been." Victoria nodded, blinking back tears she wouldn't let fall in public. "I just want to move forward from all of it. The scandal, the fighting, the constant battle. I want to build instead of defend. Then that's what we'll do. The foundation. Helping people, creating something good. Together? Together." The word felt like a promise. Not romantic, not the relationship the media had insisted existed, but something deeper. A partnership built on shared trauma and mutual respect. Two people who'd survived a storm and decided to use what they'd learned to help others weather their own. Lily ran up then, breathless and excited, holding something cupped in her hands. "Daddy! Victoria! Look what I found!" She opened her palms to reveal a small frog, green and perfect, and completely unbothered by being captured. "That's amazing, sweetheart," Ethan said. "But we should probably let him go back to his home." "I know. I just wanted to show you first." Lily carefully set the frog down by the fountain, watching it hop away into the flowers. "Everything should get to go home, right?" "Right," Victoria said softly, something breaking and healing in her voice all at once. The three of them stood there watching the frog disappear into the garden, and Ethan thought about homes, how they were built and broken and rebuilt, how sometimes the hardest journey was just finding your way back to where you belonged. He was home now. Not in a place, but in a life. A life where he could be Lily's father without fear, where he could help people without punishment, where the simple act of doing right didn't have to cost everything. It had taken months of chaos to get here, months of fighting and fear and moments when he'd been certain it would never end. But it had ended. And on the other side of the nightmare was this: a garden full of light, a daughter who believed in heroes, and a friend who'd learned to be one. That was enough. That was everything. The months that followed Richard's arrest moved with a rhythm that felt almost miraculous in its ordinariness. Winter came to Boston, blanketing the city in snow that Lily found endlessly fascinating. She made snow angels in the park, built lopsided snowmen in their building's courtyard, and asked approximately 600 questions about why ice crystals formed the patterns they did. Ethan settled into his new role teaching emergency preparedness, finding satisfaction in work that felt meaningful without being dangerous. The corporate clients who attended his CPR certification courses had no idea about his connection to Victoria Hale, and he preferred it that way. Here, he was just Ethan Cole, instructor, teaching people skills that might one day save a life. The irony wasn't lost on him. The very skill that had upended his existence was now providing stability. Some days that felt poetic. Other days it just felt weird. Victoria threw herself into the foundation with the same intensity she brought to everything else. The Hale Family Foundation, as it was officially named, launched in January with a mission statement that made Ethan tear up the first time he read it. Supporting single parents who've shown extraordinary courage in ordinary circumstances. The first round of grant applications came in by the hundreds. Single mothers working 3 jobs to keep their kids in decent schools. Fathers who'd lost everything to medical debt. Families 1 paycheck away from homelessness, held together by determination and love, and very little else. Ethan attended his first board meeting in February. nervous and out of his depth among people with advanced degrees and decades of nonprofit experience. But Victoria had been right. His perspective mattered. When the other board members wanted to add complex application requirements, Ethan pointed out that the people who needed help most wouldn't have time to fill out 20 pages of forms. "We're not trying to find the most organized applicants," he said, finding his voice halfway through the meeting. "We're trying to find the people who are drowning, and drowning people don't have the energy to prove they're drowning. They just need someone to throw them a rope." The room went quiet. Then the foundation's director, a sharp woman named Patricia who'd run 3 successful nonprofits, nodded slowly. "He's right. We simplify the application, 1 page, basic information. Let the follow-up conversations handle the details." It was a small victory, but it felt significant. Ethan had contributed something real, made a difference in how the foundation would operate. After the meeting, Victoria caught up with him in the hallway. "That was good work in there. Exactly why I wanted you on the board. I just said what seemed obvious. To you, maybe. But obvious to someone who's lived it is revolutionary to people who've only studied it." Victoria smiled. "You're going to be great at this, Ethan." They'd fallen into an easy friendship over the winter months. Coffee once a week to discuss foundation business, occasional dinners where Lily would dominate the conversation with whatever astronomical phenomenon she'd learned about that week. Phone calls that started about work and drifted into actual conversation about life, struggle, hope. It was comfortable in a way Ethan hadn't expected. Victoria had stopped being the untouchable billionaire from another world and become just Victoria. Someone who burned toast, who had anxiety dreams before big presentations, who sometimes called him at midnight just to talk through a problem she couldn't solve alone. "Are you coming to Lily's science fair next week?" Ethan asked as they walked toward the building's exit. "Wouldn't miss it." "What's her project?" "The life cycle of stars. She's been working on it for months, built this whole model showing how stars are born and die and turn into black holes." Victoria's expression softened. "She's remarkable, Ethan. You should be proud." "I am. Every single day." The science fair was held in Lily's school gymnasium, tables covered with poster boards and experiments ranging from volcano models to elaborate studies of plant growth. Lily's display stood out, not because it was the most elaborate, but because of the genuine passion evident in every detail. She'd painted galaxies on black poster board, created models of stars at different life stages from clay and wire, and written explanations in her careful 7-year-old handwriting about nuclear fusion and supernova and the eventual heat death of the universe. "And this is what happens when a really big star dies," Lily explained to anyone who'd listen, pointing to her model of a black hole. "It collapses and gets so heavy that not even light can escape. It's called the event horizon. That's the point of no return." Ethan stood back, watching his daughter share her knowledge with judges and other parents, and felt his chest swell with pride. This was what he'd been fighting for, this moment, this normalcy, the right for his daughter to be excited about science without the shadow of scandal hanging over them. Victoria arrived halfway through the fair, drawing a few curious glances, but nothing like the circus it would have been months ago. She made her way to Lily's table and spent 20 minutes asking questions, genuinely interested, treating Lily's presentation with the same seriousness she'd give a business proposal. "So if light can't escape a black hole," Victoria asked, "how do we know they exist?" "We can see how they affect things around them." Lily's eyes lit up. "Like, they bend space so much that we can see stars behind them getting all weird and stretched. It's called gravitational lensing." "That's incredible." "I know. Space is so cool." One of Lily's classmates' mothers approached, someone Ethan vaguely recognized from school pickup. She smiled at Victoria with barely concealed curiosity. "You must be the Victoria Hale, the one from the news." Ethan tensed, ready to intervene, but Victoria handled it with grace. "I am. And you are?" "Denise Patterson. My son Marcus is in Lily's class." Denise glanced at Ethan. "I just wanted to say my husband and I followed your story. What happened to you both was terrible, but the way you fought back, the foundation you started, it's inspiring." "Thank you," Victoria said simply. "But the real inspiration is people like Ethan, parents who keep showing up for their kids no matter what the world throws at them." Denise nodded, her expression sincere. "Marcus talks about Lily all the time. She's a special kid. You're raising her right, Mr. Cole. After she walked away, Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Months ago, that interaction would have gone differently. There would have been judgment, suspicion, barely veiled accusations. Now there was just acceptance. We really did make it through, didn't we? He said quietly to Victoria. We really did. Lily won second place in the science fair, which she declared was pretty good, but next year I'm totally winning first. The ribbon went up on her wall next to her other achievements, perfect attendance certificates, a drawing that won a school art contest, a photo of her with her telescope. Life continued its forward momentum. Spring arrived, bringing with it the Foundation's first round of grant distributions. Ethan attended several of the presentations personally, watching as families received assistance that would change their trajectories, rent payments that prevented evictions, medical bill coverage that stopped the crushing debt, job training that opened new opportunities. One recipient was a single father named Marcus, whose daughter had leukemia. He'd lost his job taking time off for her treatment, lost his apartment when he couldn't pay rent, and had been living in his car while his daughter stayed with relatives. The foundation covered 6 months of rent, medical expenses, and connected him with job training in medical billing, work he could do remotely while caring for his daughter. I don't know how to thank you, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face as he met with Ethan and Victoria after receiving his grant. You saved our lives, both of you. Ethan thought about a rainy night months ago, about pressing his lips to Victoria's and forcing air into her lungs, about the chain of events that had led to this moment. You don't need to thank us, he said. Just be there for your daughter. That's all she needs. After Marcus left, Victoria turned to Ethan with an expression he'd learned to recognize. The look she got when something deeply emotional was happening beneath her controlled surface. This is what it was supposed to be about, she said quietly. Not empire building or profit margins or beating competitors. Just this, helping people when they need it most. Your father would be proud. I hope so. Victoria's voice caught slightly. I spent so long trying to prove I was worthy of his legacy that I forgot what that legacy actually was. He didn't build Hale Industries to make money. He built it to provide good jobs, support families, create something that mattered. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. You found your way back because you reminded me what actually matters. She met his eyes. That night in the car, when you saved my life, you didn't just give me more time. You gave me a chance to become someone worth saving. Ethan wanted to argue that she'd always been worth saving, but he understood what she meant. The woman she'd been before, ruthless, isolated, using power as armor, that version of Victoria had been slowly suffocating under the weight of her own defenses. The near-death experience hadn't changed her so much as it had cracked her open, let light into places that had been dark too long. In May, the Foundation held its first annual gala, a significantly larger event than the initial fundraiser. The venue was the same botanical garden, but this time hundreds of people attended. Grant recipients shared their stories. Board members discussed impact metrics, and Victoria gave a speech that reduced half the audience to tears. A year ago, I almost died in the backseat of a car, she began, her voice steady but emotional. And a stranger, a man who owed me nothing, who had no reason to help except that it was the right thing to do, saved my life. In doing so, he lost his job, his privacy, his peace of mind. He was attacked by people who couldn't understand why someone would help without expecting payment. And through it all, he never stopped being who he was. A good man, a great father, someone who believed in doing right even when it cost everything. Victoria paused, finding Ethan in the crowd. Ethan Cole taught me something I should have known all along. That the measure of a person isn't their wealth or power or status. It's what they do when someone needs help. How they treat people who can't offer them anything in return. Whether they choose kindness when cruelty would be easier. She went on to discuss the Foundation's mission, the families they'd helped, the vision for expanding services. But Ethan barely heard it. He was too busy trying not to cry in a room full of Boston's elite, while his daughter squeezed his hand and whispered, "She's talking about you, Daddy. You're a hero." After the gala, as the crowd dispersed and the garden slowly emptied, Ethan found himself walking the same paths he'd walked months ago. The night of that first dinner with Lily and Victoria, when the future had felt so uncertain and frightening. Now, the uncertainty had transformed into something else. Not comfort exactly, but possibility. The sense that good things could grow from terrible soil if you gave them enough care. "You're reflective tonight," Victoria said, appearing beside him. She'd changed out of her gala gown into jeans and a sweater, looking more like herself than she had all evening. "Just thinking about how different everything is. How different I am. Better different or worse different?" Ethan considered the question honestly. "Both. I lost things I can't get back. Innocence, maybe. The belief that the world is fundamentally fair. But I gained things too. Perspective. Strength I didn't know I had. And people I never would have met otherwise." "People like me?" Victoria's tone was light, but there was real question beneath it. "Yeah, people like you." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, following the path toward the fountain where Lily had found her frog months ago. The garden looked different in spring, alive with flowers and new growth, green and vibrant where winter had left it bare. "I've been thinking about something," Victoria said finally. "About what comes next. For the foundation, for me, for all of it." "What do you mean?" "I'm stepping down as CEO of Hale Industries. Not immediately, but within the year. I'm going to focus on the foundation full-time." Ethan stopped walking. "Victoria, you can't. The company is everything to you." "No, it's not. I thought it was. For years I thought the company was my father's legacy and my purpose and my worth all rolled into one. But it's not." She turned to face him. "The foundation is my legacy. Helping people like Marcus, like the dozens of other families we've assisted this year. That's what I want to be remembered for, not quarterly profits or market share." "What about the board? Your responsibility to shareholders?" "I'll remain chairman, provide oversight. But the day-to-day operations need someone whose whole heart is in it. Mine isn't anymore. It's here, in this work." Victoria's expression was peaceful, certain. "I'm 42 years old, Ethan. If I don't make this change now, I never will. And I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what I could have built if I'd had the courage to try." "When did you decide this?" "Tonight. Watching those families share their stories, seeing what's possible when resources meet genuine need." She smiled. "You're going to think this sounds crazy, but I feel like this is what I was supposed to survive for. Like that night in your car wasn't just about staying alive. It was about finding a reason to live that actually matters." Ethan understood completely. He'd felt the same thing teaching his CPR classes, serving on the foundation board, watching resources he'd helped distribute change lives. The nightmare had led to purpose. The chaos had created meaning. "I don't think it sounds crazy at all," he said. Summer arrived with the kind of heat that made Boston shimmer. Lily finished second grade with straight A's and a teacher's note that said she was an absolute joy to have in class, curious, kind, and always willing to help others. Ethan framed the note and hung it in the kitchen. The foundation expanded, opening a second office in Cambridge to better serve families across the metro area. Ethan took on more responsibility, conducting intake interviews, assessing needs, making recommendations to the grants committee. The work was demanding but deeply satisfying. Victoria kept her word about stepping down as CEO, announcing her decision in July to surprisingly positive media coverage. Most outlets praised her commitment to philanthropy. A few questioned her business acumen, but those voices were drowned out by support from grant recipients, community leaders, and even former critics who acknowledged the foundation's genuine impact. On a Saturday in August, Ethan and Lily were grocery shopping when they ran into someone Ethan hadn't seen in months. James Morrison, the board member who'd warned him about Victoria's ruthlessness. "Ethan Cole," Morrison said, recognition crossing his face. "I heard you're doing good work with the foundation." "We're trying," Ethan replied carefully, unsure where this was going. Morrison glanced at Lily, who was comparing cereal boxes with intense concentration, then back to Ethan. "I owe you an apology. What I said last year about Victoria using you, I was wrong. Not just wrong, but projecting my own cynicism onto a situation I didn't understand. It's fine, water under the bridge." "It's not fine. I judged you both based on incomplete information and personal bias." Morrison's expression was sincere. "What you two built with that foundation, the lives you're changing, it's remarkable. I was wrong about her character, and I was wrong about yours." After Morrison left, Lily tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Who was that?" Someone who learned something important that people can surprise you if you give them a chance. Like how Victoria surprised everyone by being really nice even though people thought billionaires were supposed to be mean? Ethan smiled at his daughter's simplified but essentially accurate assessment. Exactly like that. The 1-year anniversary of that rainy night arrived in September. Ethan hadn't planned to mark it in any special way, but Victoria called him that morning with a suggestion. I know this might sound weird, but would you and Lily want to have dinner tonight? Nothing fancy, just the three of us. I feel like we should acknowledge the day somehow. What did you have in mind? Actually, I was thinking we could cook at my place. Lily mentioned once that she'd never seen a kitchen in a penthouse, and I've been told my cooking is entertainingly bad, so there's built-in amusement. Ethan laughed despite himself. You want us to come help you burn dinner? I want us to be together, however that looks. That evening, Ethan and Lily arrived at Victoria's penthouse carrying ingredients for what was supposed to be homemade pizza. Victoria had cleared her massive kitchen island, set out bowls and utensils, and looked genuinely nervous about the whole endeavor. I should warn you, I don't actually cook much, or ever. My talents lie elsewhere. Then tonight's a learning experience, Ethan said, rolling up his sleeves. What followed was gloriously chaotic. Victoria put too much flour everywhere. Lily insisted the pizza needed space toppings, which manifested as pepperoni arranged in constellation patterns. Ethan tried to teach them both how to toss dough and ended up with flour in his hair and sauce on his shirt. By the time they got the pizzas in the oven, the kitchen looked like a disaster zone, and all three of them were laughing so hard they could barely breathe. This is the most fun I've had in years, Victoria admitted, wiping flour off her face. Thank you for suggesting. Wait, I suggested this. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for having us, Ethan corrected. While the pizzas cooked, they migrated to Victoria's living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of Boston Harbor. Lily immediately pressed her nose to the glass, pointing out boats and buildings, and asking if Victoria thought aliens could see the city from space. I think if aliens made it all the way to Earth, they could probably see whatever they wanted, Victoria said seriously. The question is whether they'd find Boston interesting. Of course they would. We have history and science museums and really good pizza. When it's not burned, Ethan added, checking the timer. The pizzas came out perfect, or at least perfectly imperfect. The constellation patterns held, the cheese bubbled just right, and when they sat down to eat at Victoria's dining table, it felt less like a special occasion and more like something they did all the time. I've been thinking about that night, Victoria said as they ate. The anniversary. And I realized something. I don't remember the fear anymore, or the pain. What I remember is waking up in the hospital and asking why you kissed me, and you looked so offended. Ethan laughed. I wasn't offended. I was exhausted and confused and worried you thought I'd done something wrong. I know that now, but in the moment, your face was priceless. Victoria's expression turned more serious. What do you remember when you think about it now? Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering. I remember thinking I couldn't let you die, that it didn't matter who you were or what it might cost me later. There was just a person who needed help, and I knew how to give it. He met her eyes. I'd do it again. Even knowing everything that came after, I'd make the same choice. Would you really? After everything Richard put you through, the threats to Lily? Yeah, because the alternative was watching you die when I could have prevented it. I couldn't live with that, still can't. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're a better person than I am, Ethan Cole. I'm just a person, same as you, same as everyone. We all just make the best choices we can with what we're given. Lily, who'd been listening quietly while working on her third slice of pizza, spoke up. Daddy says that doing the right thing isn't about being special. It's about choosing to help when you can, even when it's hard. Your daddy's very wise, Victoria said softly. I know. He's the best. After dinner, they stood together at the windows, watching the sun set over Boston, painting the harbor in shades of amber and rose. Lily had fallen asleep on Victoria's couch, exhausted from the excitement of cooking and eating and the endless questions she'd asked about penthouse living. She's out, Ethan whispered, covering her with a throw blanket. She's wonderful. You've done an incredible job raising her. We're not done yet. She's only 7. Still plenty of time for me to screw it up. You won't. You're too good at being her dad. Victoria turned from the window to look at him. Can I ask you something? And I want you to be completely honest. Of course. Do you ever regret it? Not the CPR, but everything after. The job with me, the foundation, the way our lives got tangled together. Do you ever wish you just walked away when you had the chance? Ethan thought about all the moments over the past year, the fear and the chaos, and the nights he'd been certain everything was falling apart. But he also thought about the foundation, the families they'd helped, the purpose he'd found in work that mattered. And he thought about Victoria herself, the friend she'd become, the person she'd allowed herself to be once the armor came off. No, he said honestly. I don't regret any of it. It was hard, maybe the hardest thing I've ever done, but it led here, to this, and I wouldn't trade this for anything. Victoria smiled, and in that moment, she looked younger than her years, lighter, like someone who'd finally set down a weight she'd been carrying too long. Good, because I can't imagine doing any of this without you. They stood there in the fading light, watching Boston transform from day to night, and Ethan felt a sense of completion, not an ending exactly, but a full circle. The night that had begun with fear and desperation had led to this moment of peace and connection. Lily stirred on the couch, murmuring something about Mars in her sleep, and both Ethan and Victoria smiled. We should probably get her home, Ethan said reluctantly. Or you could stay, both of you. I have guest rooms, and breakfast ingredients I'm statistically certain to ruin, which could be entertaining. Ethan hesitated, then saw the hope in Victoria's expression. Not manipulation or expectation, just genuine desire for them to stay, for the evening not to end, for the family they'd accidentally become to have a little more time together. Okay, he said. We'll stay. Victoria's smile was radiant. I'll make up the rooms. And Ethan, thank you for everything, for saving my life, yes, but also for showing me what it could become. The next morning, Ethan woke to the smell of something burning. He found Victoria in the kitchen, grimacing at a pan of what might have once been eggs, but now looked like abstract art. I tried, she said defensively. I really did. I can see that. Ethan took over, salvaging what he could and starting fresh while Victoria watched with fascination. How do you make it look so easy? Practice. Years of making breakfast for a kid who has very strong opinions about egg texture. Lily wandered in, still in her pajamas, and climbed onto a kitchen stool. Are we having breakfast at Victoria's house? This is so cool. They ate together as morning light flooded the penthouse, and it struck Ethan how comfortable this had become, how natural it felt to be here, sharing a meal, talking about their plans for the day. Victoria mentioned a foundation site visit she had scheduled. Lily talked about the book she was reading about black holes. Ethan reminded them both about the fundraising meeting next week. It was domestic and ordinary and perfect. After breakfast, while Victoria cleaned up and Lily packed her things, Ethan stood at the windows one more time, looking out at the city that had witnessed their entire journey. From that rainy night to this quiet morning, Boston had been the backdrop to their transformation. Ready to go, Daddy? Lily asked, backpack slung over her shoulder. Yeah, sweetheart, ready. Victoria walked them to the elevator, and there was a moment of awkwardness as they said goodbye. Handshake? Hug? After the intimacy of the evening and morning, Ethan wasn't sure what the protocol was. Victoria solved it by pulling him into a brief, warm hug. Same time next week? For the meeting? Wouldn't miss it. She knelt down to Lily's level. Thank you for teaching me about space toppings. Next time, we're definitely doing solar system pizza. With extra cheese on Jupiter because it's the biggest. Obviously. In the elevator, Lily turned to Ethan with a thoughtful expression. Daddy, is Victoria going to be part of our family forever? The question caught him off guard. What makes you ask that? Because she feels like family, not like a mom, Lily added quickly. Just like someone who belongs with us. Like Grandma or Aunt Sarah. Someone who's always going to be there. Ethan thought about how to answer honestly. I don't know about forever, sweetheart. But I know she's important to us, and we're important to her, and that's enough for now. Okay. Lily seemed satisfied with that answer. I hope it's forever, though. She's really nice, and she needs us. Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan thought, Lily had seen something he'd been dancing around for months. Victoria wasn't just someone they'd helped or who'd helped them. She was someone who'd found a home in their lives the same way they'd found one in hers. The foundation continued to grow throughout the fall. They helped over 300 families, established partnerships with schools and hospitals, and began developing programs for job training and financial literacy. Every success felt like validation. Every life changed felt like proof that the nightmare had been worth surviving. In November, Lily turned 8. Victoria threw her a birthday party at the Botanical Garden, the place that had become significant to all of them. The place that they invited Lily's whole class, rented telescopes for stargazing, and had a cake decorated like the solar system. Watching Lily laugh with her friends, showing them constellations through the telescopes, explaining the difference between planets and dwarf planets with passionate certainty, Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. "You okay?" Victoria asked quietly, appearing beside him. "More than okay. This is everything I wanted for her. Normalcy, happiness. A childhood that isn't defined by the worst thing that happened to me." "To us," Victoria corrected. "And it's not the worst thing anymore, is it? It's just the thing that changed everything." She was right. The fear and chaos had faded, leaving only the growth. The connections forged under pressure. The purpose discovered through struggle. As the party wound down and parents collected their children, Lily approached them both with a drawing she'd made. "I did this for you," she said shyly. "Both of you." The picture showed 3 figures standing in a garden surrounded by flowers. One tall figure with dark hair and a suit, Victoria. One medium figure with a gentle smile, Ethan. And one small figure with wild curls and a telescope, Lily herself. Above them, she'd drawn stars and planets and a banner that read "Family." Ethan felt his throat close with emotion. Victoria's hand found his, squeezed once, and he squeezed back. "It's perfect, Lily," Victoria said, her voice thick. "Can I keep it?" "I made it for both of you. You have to share." "We can do that," Ethan managed. Later, after the party ended and the garden emptied, the 3 of them walked together under the early evening stars. Lily ran ahead, chasing fireflies that had somehow survived into late autumn, while Ethan and Victoria followed at a slower pace. "She called us family," Victoria said quietly, "in the picture. I noticed. Is that okay? I don't want to overstep or presume or—" "It's okay," Ethan interrupted gently. "Better than okay. It's true." Victoria stopped walking, turned to face him fully. "I never expected this. Any of it. When I got in your car that night, I was just trying to survive the evening, and now, a year later, I have this life I never knew I wanted, this family I never knew I needed." Her voice broke slightly. "How did we get here, Ethan?" "One choice at a time. One day at a time. Just kept moving forward until we ended up someplace good." "Is this good? For you? Honestly?" Ethan looked at his daughter playing in the garden, at the woman who'd become one of his closest friends, at the life they'd built from the wreckage of that terrible night. He thought about the foundation and the families they'd helped, and the purpose that filled his days with meaning. "Yeah," he said, "this is good. This is really, really good." Because Victoria's smile was everything, relief and joy and gratitude all mixed together. "Then let's keep it, whatever this is, however it looks. Let's just keep choosing it." "Deal." Lily called them over to see a constellation she'd identified, and they went together, the 3 of them bound by circumstances and choice, and something that looked like love even if none of them had named it yet. Winter came again, bringing with it the holidays and the Foundation's year-end fundraising push. They exceeded their goals by 40%, allowing them to help even more families in the coming year. Victoria's transition from CEO to full-time Foundation Director was complete, and she threw herself into the work with renewed energy. On Christmas Eve, Ethan and Lily had dinner at Victoria's penthouse. It had become tradition without any of them explicitly deciding it would be, just another evolution in their relationship that felt natural and right. Victoria had gotten better at cooking, though better was relative. The meal was edible and the company was perfect, which was really all that mattered. After dinner, they exchanged gifts. Lily gave Victoria a hand-drawn star chart showing the constellations visible from Boston. Victoria gave Lily a professional-grade telescope that made the girl's eyes go wide with wonder. And Ethan gave Victoria a photo he'd had framed, the 3 of them at Lily's birthday party, laughing together under the garden lights. "So we never forget where we came from," he said, "and what we survived to get here." Victoria's gift to Ethan was simpler but somehow more profound. A leather-bound journal with a note on the first page. "For recording the moments that matter, the ones worth remembering." "Thank you," he said, genuinely touched. "For everything. Not just this, but all of it. Thank you for letting me be part of this, of your life. Lily's life." Victoria glanced at Lily, who was peering through her new telescope at Victoria's windows. "I know I can't replace her mother or be something I'm not, but I hope I can be someone who matters. Someone who's there. You already are." They sat together on Victoria's couch while Lily explored the telescope's functions, and Ethan thought about how far they'd all traveled. Not in distance, but in understanding, in becoming people who could survive anything because they'd already survived the worst. The night that had almost ended Victoria's life had instead given all of them something irreplaceable. A second chance. A new beginning. A family built not on blood or obligation, but on choice and courage, and the simple decision to keep showing up for each other. Outside, snow began to fall, covering Boston in white. Inside, three people who'd found each other in the darkest moment sat together in warmth and light, proof that sometimes the worst things led to the best things if you were brave enough to see them through. Ethan opened the journal Victoria had given him and wrote on the second page, the first being reserved for her note. "Today, 1 year and 3 months after the night that changed everything, I sat with my daughter and my friend in a penthouse overlooking Boston and realized I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not despite the chaos, but because of it. We are not our worst moments. We are what we build from them." He closed the journal and looked up to find Victoria watching him with knowing eyes. "What did you write?" she asked. "The truth. That we made it. All of us. Together." Lily abandoned her telescope and climbed between them on the couch, nestling against Ethan's side with her feet in Victoria's lap. "Can we watch a movie? Something about space?" "Anything you want, sweetheart," Ethan said. They settled in to watch a documentary about Mars exploration, Lily providing running commentary about everything the narrator got wrong or left out. Victoria and Ethan exchanged amused glances over her head, the comfortable communication of people who'd learned to understand each other's unspoken language. This was home now, not a place, but a feeling. The certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. That the bonds forged in crisis had proven strong enough to carry them through peace. As the documentary played and Lily's commentary gradually gave way to sleepy murmurs, Ethan felt something settle in his chest, a peace he hadn't known he was searching for. The understanding that he'd done everything right by doing one thing right, choosing to save a life when it would have been easier to look away. That choice had cost him everything he thought mattered, and given him everything that actually did. Victoria caught his eye in the darkness, illuminated only by the television's glow, and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Ethan smiled and mouthed back, "Always." Because that was the promise they'd made without ever speaking it aloud. To be there, to show up, to choose each other in this strange, beautiful family they'd built from the wreckage of one terrible night. Lily fell asleep between them, her head on Ethan's shoulder, her feet still in Victoria's lap. Neither adult moved, unwilling to disturb her peace. They sat there long after the documentary ended, watching snow fall over Boston, holding the quiet moment like the gift it was. Outside, the city that had witnessed their transformation slept beneath winter's blanket. Inside, 3 people who'd learned what truly mattered sat together in the warm darkness, proof that sometimes the hardest journeys led home. And home, Ethan realized with absolute clarity, wasn't where you started or even where you ended up. It was who you chose to bring with you, who you fought to keep, who you saved, and who saved you in return. He'd saved Victoria's life that rainy night, but in all the ways that mattered, she'd saved his too. And Lily, perfect Lily, had saved them both by reminding them what love looked like when it wasn't complicated by expectation or obligation. Just pure, simple, choosing to be together because being apart was unimaginable. This was their story. Not a fairy tale or a romance or a simple redemption arc. Just 3 people finding each other in the chaos and deciding to build something worth keeping. The snow continued to fall, covering the world in new possibilities. And inside Victoria's penthouse, A family born from crisis held each other in the darkness and knew without question that they were home.